I'm very happy some of you have contacted me over the assignment, and I was able to give my response who have contacted me and posed specific questions. And also I must apologize that day Mr. Gunawardana requested me to summarize in singular for at least for 5 minutes at the end. I forgot about it and no one reminded me as well. So we shall do it today. But before that, I thought of asking you all whether there are any questions with regard to the assignment. Any more questions?
Good morning, sir. Yesterday I posted the question on eKYC and blockchain topic.
Yes. You came as Sulari, right?
Yes, sir.
Right. Yes, I did respond to you. Did you read that?
Yes, I did.
So, any further questions?
You have mentioned that you would explain it further at today's class. So
yes. So I'll read your questions. Read your question for the benefit of everybody else, and also my response. Now you said it would be great if you could explain on caption subject. The caption subject clarification is new developments using eKYC and blockchain. You want me to explain that?
Yes, sir. If you could, please.
Yes. So my response was blockchain relates to an arrangement to share information between identified group of people. Identified group. Now, if all the bankers join together in the blockchain, the information will be shared within the identified members of that group of bankers, right? In this case, a group of bankers and financial institutions. KYC information of customers identified by the common identity, say something like a national identity card, NIC, stored in the computers of financial institutions. Each institution, they usually store the customer information, right? Customer information. So there'll be an arrangement. There'll be an arrangement under the blockchain connecting each computer through a communication line. Each computer will be connected and identified by the relevant NIC. Each customer's KYC will be able to access, the participants will be able to access the KYC data only, not the transaction data, among the members. And it will be shared within the financial institutions with each other on an electronic form. I meant the electronic form means accessible through a lease line communication system. And it would be easy for all the participants, institutions to update KYC data regularly and efficiently. So you would understand, right? Now, if all of us now, all 30 of us now, or 38 of us now, are connected through one communication line, our respective computers, then I can see the information, KYC information stored in your computer, and that you can see the KYC information stored in the other person's computer, identified by the relevant NIC only, right? So if I had 10 customers, KYC data will be stored in the in my computer of the 10 customers under the respective NIC number. So you will be able to access those KYC data, and then you will be able to access the next person's computer and identified by the respective NIC. And then in the process, if I find any additional KYC information of that particular NIC holder, I'll be updating it. Then that additional information also will be able to accessed by you and the rest of the members of the group. This is the chain. This is the chain, right? So this chain will work very frequently, and then we'll be able to access. So was that the difficult area to understand, or the eKYC concept?
Yes, sir. Now it's clear, sir.
Ah.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome. So can we also discuss what are the advantages and the disadvantages of such a system? Advantages will be definitely the 360-degree KYC information disclosed to all the financial institutions under this blockchain group will be able to access by each and every member. An incremental KYC information that is going to come day after day also will be able to access by each and every member. So that's the advantage, isn't it? So you don't have to relate to make additional effort to find that additional information or missing information individually. What are the disadvantages? Are there any disadvantages? Can someone comment? No? Of course, the secrecy factor, I won't know that the customer is also having an account with you. But the KYC through the NIC will be shown to me on an updated basis. I won't know whether that particular customer is having an account with one or two or every one of you in your institutions. So that secrecy factor is also maintained, right? Then I would see some disadvantages like this. Now, it's better than the current system where the KYC data of individual customers are maintained by the respective individual institutions on a solo basis. And it is hard and cumbersome to update and all that. That is given. However, only for a matter of sharing KYC, there'll be an advantage. How about thinking of a macro picture and a dedicated institution like the CRIB or Lanka Clear, who would operate a computer system and a software system to house those KYC information under each and every NIC supplied by respective financial institution under that blockchain, and that institution will be vested with the responsibility of maintaining the secrecy, meaning my set of customer information, you will not share with anybody else, any other institution. And your set of customer information will be shared, but the fact that the other transaction and the fact that the customer is maintaining an account with you will not be information. Information will not be shared with anybody else. The KYC information only will be able to be accessed by each and every member institution with whom they maintain the account relationship, but not of any other transaction wise. And when such an arrangement exists, that dedicated institution in the form of a CRIB or Lanka Clear, who is vested with which is manned by independent, responsible, accountable set of officers, they can be responsible for the updating of KYC, and then they can take on the responsibility of maintaining the updated KYC from each and every financial institution. And therefore, each and every financial institution will not have to be bothered for the accurate KYC that they maintain. That particular dedicated institution will bear that responsibility. So what is left is doing business with each customer. So the institutions, financial institutions, banks and finance companies will focus on the day-to-day business with the customer. Having access to the KYC information stored at the central entity, they can do their own business. That those business transactions will be secluded or will be only accessible to on their computers to that institution only. Understood? Further advantages are there where that entity responsible for updating the KYC of each customer can supply such information to the central bank, the regulator as well. The regulator will have information, access to information of all the NIC holders or the customer base at that particular entity. And with that, they will be able to access the reporting formats which are now supplied by the respective institutions individually. Central bank can access that particular entity where the KYC data is maintained and obtain the information, whether it be FIU, whether it be bank supervision, whether it be non-bank supervision, or whether it be domestic operation division, whether it could be international operation division or any other or foreign exchange department. They will be able to access and obtain the information they want without troubling the individual institutions. So not only the responsible updating KYC, even to some extent, supplying the central bank reporting can also be handled by that separated entity with accountability and responsibility. Did you understand? So isn't that a better solution? So then now I just unfolded in front of you the KYC stored at respective institutions as we do now. Then eKYC is that when customers are at a distance, maybe overseas customers, they will be able to supply their KYC information from a distance through electronic mode, and those had to be recorded at the archived at the respective institutions. That is eKYC, subject to the regulatory permission. Then now recently we also read on the news that VKYC, video KYC, done. I think the paper article said it is done by NDB, where the customer is interviewed through video conferencing, and those video conference material will be recorded, videos will be recorded and archived, but one has to inquire and research how the regulatory aspect, acceptability by the regulators, the VKYC. Then thirdly, what we're discussing is the blockchain aspect. Sharing the KYC information amongst a group of bankers and group of finance companies who join this blockchain group chain. And there won't be any segregated, identified computer and software and hardware established to record, but individual computers of these members of bankers and finance companies, they will be able to access through a communication line. Thirdly, fourthly, what we discuss is that creating a separate entity, dedicated entity to house the hardware and software computers, and then having the responsibility of accountability of updating the KYC regularly. They should be able to supply the information, facilitate reporting to the regulator as well on a periodical basis, so that the more than 50 or 60% of the responsibility of KYC and maintenance of supplying the reporting to the central bank or regulator will be handled by that dedicated entity. So it will be a unique situation where jointly all the bankers, all the finance companies getting together, creating an entity with dedicated capital, dedicated computer systems, and dedicated staff who would bear the responsibility of maintaining the secrecy of each banks and finance companies' customers, as well as updating the KYC and updating the regulator with the required reporting. I guess it's very clear now. Further questions?
So, if a dedicated entity is assigned in order to updating the KYC,
yes.
What is the frequent we can implement? Like, if we are practicing that,
yes,
what is the frequency of updating KYC? And other thing is, the customer is executing the transaction with the financial institution time to time.
yes.
So there will be a possibility of mismatch of information, no?
Yes.
And other thing, sir, when it comes to transaction monitoring,
yes,
so there will be a deviation, like from institution to institution, the customer can perform different level of transactions.
yes.
So that also will be a problem, no?
May I ask you a question? May I ask you a question, Mr. Kandasamy?
Yes.
How does it happen with the crib now? Reporting is done. I know it is
monthly, no?
Monthly.
Yes.
And then there is a time lag. I understand that.
Yeah, deadline.
But that time lag decision was taken by the regulator and then the consortium of bankers who are members of CRIB.
Okay.
Because of some difficulties and the validity of the transaction that they thought that is adequate after 1 month time lag. But in this proposal, the dedicated entity created to house the KYC data of customers, you can make it even hot backup, isn't it? Real time?
Almost real time.
Almost real time.
So how are we going to control?
Same way,
but like, there is no interaction with the customer, no?
There won't be an interaction with the customer. You are right, 100% right.
Yes.
They will not contact the customer at all.
So with the Sri Lankan environment and the people's mind,
yeah.
So there's a possibility of deviation of information, no? They won't give what you call actual info to the particular institution.
Have you got any such incidents or experiences with CRIB?
So unless otherwise the CRIB validates, they don't know whether that information is correct or not. So
Yes, yes.
for
No,
example, I
yes.
have seen, see, when I check my crib,
Mm.
the certain institutions are reporting, say, when it comes to a credit card,
Yeah,
okay, certain institutions are showing as available balance only the portion of the monthly installment.
right.
But some of the institutions are sending whatever the what you call installment plan, everything with the entire total outstanding portion to the crib. So
Yeah.
still that is not captured by the central bank.
Mhm.
So there is a
I get it.
deviation on that also.
Yeah, I get it. The anomaly is in the reporting format or reporting the different level of data being reported.
Yes. So there is no strict guideline on that.
Yeah, yeah. Now, when it is hot backup
Yes.
and a dedicated institution created for with responsibility and accountability and with set of rules and code of conduct for ethics for the officers handling such things at the entity, I think we can overcome all these problems. When it is hot backup, after a period of initial validation, we can program each and every institution to report data in a uniform manner, so that the dissimilarity that you just explained could be overcome, isn't it? In
Yes.
fact, Mr. Kandasamy,
But
we brought this proposal somewhere in the years 2008, 9, and 10. And then we were able to, from the point of view of the Association of Compliance Officers of Banks, which period I was the chairman, and we made it possible through the Sri Lanka Banks Association, the consortium of the dedicated company where the CEOs are members of each bank. You're aware of SLBA?
okay.
And then we were able to make presentations to the central bank senior officers, deputy governors as well, which won their heart, and then they approved it. And then we also made several presentations to the CEOs of banks, and they also endorsed it. And we went on to launch an RFP, request for proposal, worldwide for major IT companies. There were 9 companies who submitted their bids. And then out of the 9 companies, we pruned them down to 2. The 2 companies selected was 3i and Infrasoft. And then we wanted them to do a proof of concept. And during which time in the year 2010, October, I had to step down from the chairmanship of Compliance Officers Association because I was retiring from Hat National Bank, where I was a compliance officer. But the next set of officer bearers who took over the helm of Compliance Officers Association did not pursue that further. So we went to the extent of calling for bids, submissions by after launching an RFP, which really won the approval of central bank and almost all the bankers. And some of the finance companies I knew were harping was very anxious to join in as well. So such a endeavor would definitely facilitate not only to drive down the cost, but to reduce the responsibility of maintaining the KYC and reporting requirements to the regulator to a great deal to each and every finance company and the bank. Isn't it?
Yes, sir.
So I'm talking with practical experience driving such a project up to that extent.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Welcome. So I'll start with the assignment presentation. Right. සිංහලෙන් කතා කරන්න කියලා යෝජනාවක් තිබුණ නිසා මම මේ සිංහලෙන් නැවත විස්තර කරන්න පටන් ගත්තේ. අපේ assignment number 1 එකේ අපි යෝජනා කරේ topic එක regulated requirements of KYC, CDD, EDD and the need for compliance. ඒ කියන්නේ හැම ගර්ධනකරුවෙකුම know your customer දත්ත සහ customer due diligence සහ enhanced due diligence දත්ත රැස් කර ගැනීමට තියෙන regulation වලට අනුගත වෙන්න comply වෙන්න අවශ්‍යතාවය සහ එහි බලපෑම විස්තර කරන්න තමයි මේ assignment එකෙන් අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වුණේ. ඉතින් ඒ සඳහා වචන 3000කුත් plus minus 10% සහ මේ assignment එක මේ මාස 30 වෙනිදා සබ්මිට් කරන්නත් අපි යෝජනා කරා. ඒ සඳහා ඊමේල් ඇඩ්‍රස් දෙකක් දීලා තියෙනවා මේනක සහ මගේ. ඒ සඳහා අපි මූලිකව යෝජනා කරා මුල තියෙන ටික පොඩක් විස්තර කරන්නම් අපේ සිංහලෙන් තව කරුණු අවබෝධ කරගන්නට අවශ්‍ය උදවිය සඳහා. know your customer කියලා කියන්නේ සමහරවිට know your client කියලාත් හඳුන්වනවා. මේ අපේ ගනුදෙනුකරුවන්ගේ නම ලිපිනය ආදායම සහ වෙනත් දත්ත ඒ අනුසාරයෙන්ම ඇත්ත සැටියෙන්ම genuine විදිහට සටහන් කර ගැනීමේ අවශ්‍යතාවය ඉතා දැඩිව තියෙනවා. ඇත්තටම කියනවා නම් regulations පටන් ගන්නේ 2006 වසරේ Financial Transaction Reporting Act FTRA එකේ Financial Transaction Reporting Act number 6 of 2006 එකේ section 2කින් තමයි පටන් ගන්නෙ. හැබැයි ඊට කලින් ඉඳලා හැම බැංකුකරුවෙකුම හැම ෆයිනෑන්ස් කම්පැනියකටම අවශ්‍යතාවය තියෙනවා ගනුදෙනුකරුවන්ගේ නිවැරදි දත්ත සටහන් කර ගැනීමේ අවශ්‍යතාවය තිබුණා දිගටම. ගනුදෙනුකරුවෝ තමන්ට අවශ්‍ය බැංකු පහසුකම් සහ මූල්‍ය පහසුකම් ලබා ගැනීම සඳහා තම දත්ත ආදායම සහ තම සේවය කරන ස්ථානය පිළිබඳව හැම දත්තයක්ම නොපිරිහෙලා සැපයීමට උත්සාහ කරා. හැබැයි මේ අතරින් කිහිප දෙනෙක් තමන්ගේ කාර්ය කර ගැනීමට පමණක් අවශ්‍ය දත්ත සපුරලා අනෙක් ඒවා තමන්ට කරදරයක් විදිහට සලකන උදවියත් හිටියා. ඉතින් කොහොම හරි මීට කලින් 1980 වසර වල පමණ ඉඳලා certificate of deposits තැන්පතු සහතික කියලා CDs වලට ඒ දවස්වල හිටපු මුදල් මාත්‍ය ආචාර්ය එන්.ඒ. පෙරේරා මහත්මයා ගෙන ආපු මූල්‍ය උපකරණයක් තිබුණා. එයින් අවශ්‍යතාවයක් තිබුණේ නැහැ ගනුදෙනුකරුවේ නමවත් ලිපිනයවත් සැපයීමට. මොකද ඒ කාලේ අවශ්‍යතාවය තිබුණේ අර ගෙවල් වල හංගලා තිබ්බ මුදල් සාමාන්‍ය බැංකු අතර මූල්‍ය පද්ධතිය සංසරණය වෙන මූල්‍ය පද්ධතියට ඇතුළත් කර ගැනීමට එළියට ගැනීම අවශ්‍යතාවය තමයි තිබුණේ. හැබැයි කාල යනකොට සමාජයේ ව්‍යසන සමාජයේ අනර්ථකාරී ක්‍රියා වැඩි වෙනකොට money laundering සහ terrorist financing activities වැඩි වෙනකොට regulator Central Bank of Sri Lanka නියම කරා 1990 ගණන් වල සහ 2000 වසරවල CDs සම්බන්ධයෙන් නම් නිකුත් කරන පුද්ගලයන්ගේ නම් සහ ලිපිනය CDs issued register එක සටහන් කරගන්නට කියලා. ඒ විතරක් නෙවෙයි CDs encash කරනකොට ලබා ගන්න පුද්ගලයන්ගේ නමුත් සටහන් කරගන්න ලේඛනයක් පවත්වාගෙන යන්න කියලා රෙගුලාසි ඉදිරිපත් කරා. ඒ අතරතුර තමයි Financial Action Task Force FATF ගැන අපි හැදැනීමක් කරා ගිය සතියේ. Financial Action Task Force කියන්නේ ගෝලීයව AML/CFT standard setting process එක ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන්නේ. ඒ අර ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ recommendations 40 අදාළව. ඊට පසුව තවත් recommendations 8ක් ගෙන ආවා ත්‍රස්තවාදී ක්‍රියා මූල්‍යකරණය සම්බන්ධයෙන් financing of terrorism සම්බන්ධයෙන්. ඒ අනුව Financial Action Task Force කියන ආයතනයේ ගෝලීය ආයතනයේ headquarters තියෙන ලන්ඩන් නගරේ. ඒ අයට පුළුවන්කම තියෙනවා ඕනෑම රටක් ඕනෑම මල්ටිනේෂනල් බැංකුවක් හෝ කම්පැනි එකක් ඕනෑම බැංකුවක් ඕනෑම ෆිනන්ස් කම්පැනියක් ඕනෑම පුද්ගලයෙක් ලෝකේ ඉන්න ඕනෑම පුද්ගලයෙකුගේ නම සහ ලිපිනය හඳුනුම්පත් ඉදිරිපත් කරලා මේ පුද්ගලයා හෝ මේ රට හෝ මේ බැංකුව හෝ මේ මල්ටිනේෂනල් කම්පැනි එක ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ රෙකමෙන්ඩේෂන්ස් වලට අනුගත වෙන්නේ නැහැ කියලා නම් කරන්න. මේ බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ name and shame concept එක. ඒ කියන්නේ නම් කර ලැජ්ජාවට පත් කිරීමේ පිළිවෙතක් තමයි ඒගොල්ලෝ අනුගමනය කරන්නේ. එහෙම නම් ලයිස්ට්ුවකට ඇතුළත් වුණොත් එහෙම ඒ රට හෝ ඒ ආයතන සහ ඒ පුද්ගලයන් සමග ගනුදෙනු කරන්නට ලෝකයේ ආයතන බැලි වෙනවා උත්සාහ කරන්නේ නැහැ. ඒ වගේම ඉවත් වෙන්නයි උත්සාහ කරන්නේ. උදාහරණ විදිහට දැනට පවතින එසේ නම් කරපු රටවල් වශයෙන් උතුරු කොරියාව, මියන්මාරය වගේ රටවල් උදාහරණ ගන්න පුළුවන්. ඊට අමතරව නම් කරපු ආයතන විදිහට අපිට දේශීයව බලා ගන්න පුළුවන් LTT ආයතනය වගේ ආයතන, නැත්නම් අල්-කයිඩා ආයතනය වගේ සංවිධාන, අනේ ඒ වගේ ආයතන නම් කරලා තියෙනවා FATF සංවිධානය මගින් name and shame concept එක යටතේ. ඉතින් ඊට අමතරව මේ region එකට Asia Pacific region එකට අදාළව Asia Pacific group of Asia Pacific group කියලා සංවිධානයක් තියෙනවා. FATF ස්ටයිල් එකේම ආයතනයක්. ඒක හෙඩ් ඔෆිස් එක තියෙන හොංකොං නගරේ. අපේ රටටත් අදාළයි අපේ ආසියාව නිසා. ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ තියෙනවා ස්ට්‍රැටජික් ප්ලෑන් එකක්, ඇනුවල් බිස්නස් ප්ලෑන් එකක්. ඊට අමතරව ඇසෙස්මන්ට් මෙතඩොලොජි එකක් තියෙනවා. එක එක රටවල, එක එක බැංකුවල, එක එක ආයතනවල, එක එක සංවිධානවල මේ FATF සංවිධානයේ රෙකමෙන්ඩේෂන්ස් වලට අනුගත වීමේ ඇසෙස්මන්ට් එකක් කරලා ඒ අය පිළිබඳව දැනුවත් කිරීමක් කරනවා. නම් කිරීමක් කරනවා. ඉතින් Asia Pacific Group of Money Laundering කියන ආයතනය අපේ ලංකාවට කීපවතාවක්ම වාර්ෂිකව පැමිණෙනවා. ඒ අය ඇවිල්ලා ගොඩාක් වෙලාවට එක බැංකුවලට සහ වෙනත් ආයතන වලට වෙස්වලාගෙන වගේ ගිහිල්ලා ගනුදෙනු කරන්න උත්සාහ කරලා ඒ ආයතන නියමිත කරුණු සොයා බලනවාද කියලා විස්තර රිපෝට් එකක් මහා බැංකුවට සහ ඒ අයගේ මූලස්ථාන වලට සපයා ගන්නවා. මට මතකයක් තියෙනවා 2007 6-7 වසරවල මේ ඒෂියා පැසිෆික් ගෲප් එකේ නිලධාරීන් කණ්ඩායමක් ලංකාවට ඇවිල්ලා ඒ දවස්වල මම වැඩ කරපු හැට් නැෂනල් බැංකුවේ මාළිගාවත ශාඛාව ගිහිල්ලා එතනදී ගිණුමක් ඕපන් කරන්නයි වෙනත් ගණතුණු ලීස් ෆැසිලිටි එකක් ගන්නයි ඇප්ලිකේෂන් බාර දුන්නාන් පස්සේ එතන ගන්න KYC data සහ වෙනත් කරුණු පිළිබඳව ඒගොල්ලෝ සොයා බැලීමක් කරලා තිබුණා. අතරම වෙස් වලාගෙන තමයි ඒගොල්ලෝ ගිහිල්ලා තිබුණේ ගණන්කරුවෝ විදියට. එතනදී සමහර කරුණු මේ ස්ටෑන්ඩඩ් එකට මදි කියලා ඒගොල්ලෝ රිපෝට් එකක් දීලා තිබුණා සෙන්ට්‍රල් බැංක් එකට සහ ඒගොල්ලෝගේ මූලස්ථානයට. ඉතින් සෙන්ට්‍රල් බැංක් එක දුන්න රිපෝට් එකෙන් අපිට වාර්තාවක් ආවා ඒ ගැන කරුණු පැහැදිලි කරන්න කියලා. අපි කරුණු පැහැදිලි කරලා අපේ වැරදි නිවැරදි කරගෙන අපි ඒ අයට නැවත දන් දුන්නා. දැන් අපේ මේ ඔබතුමාලා සටහන් කරපු වැරදි ඔක්කොම නිවැරදි කරලා තියෙන්නේ කියලා අපි රිපෝට් එකක් ඇව්වා. අන්න ඒ වගේ ක්‍රියාත්මක සහ ක්‍රියාශීලී ක්‍රියාදාමයක් මේ FATF ආයතනයත් APG ආයතනයත් විසින් ක්‍රියාත්මක කරනවා. ඉතින් KYC සම්බන්ධයෙන් අපි තවදුරටත් කතා කරනකොට මේ අපේ අසයින්මන්ට් එකට අදාළව ගණන්කරුවන්ගේ දත්ත එකතු කර ගැනීම සහ ඒවා යථාත් කාලීන කරගෙන පවත්වාගෙන යාම සම්බන්ධයෙන් පියවර කීපයක් ගැන අපි කතා කරා. Establish customer identity, understand the nature of the customer's activities, qualify that the source of funds is legitimate and assessment of source of fund is legitimate, and assessment of risk and return. ගොඩක් වෙලාවට regulations වල මේ risk and return පැත්ත කතා කරන්නේ නැහැ. මොකද ඒගොල්ලන්ට ප්‍රායෝගික බැංකුකරණය සහ මූල්‍ය කටයුතු පිළිබඳව ලාභ තත්ත්ව සහ අවදානම පිළිබඳවට වැඩිය නීති රීති වලට අනුගත වීම පිළිබඳව පමණක් ඒගොල්ලෝ ෆෝකස් කරන නිසා, හැබැයි අපි ප්‍රායෝගික බැංකුකරුවන් විදියට ප්‍රායෝගික මූල්‍ය සමාගම් වල නිලධාරීන් විදියට මේ රිස්ක් ඇන්ඩ් රිටර්න් පැත්ත ගැන අපි ගොඩාක් ෆෝකස් කරන්නට ඕනේ. ඒ කියන්නේ යම් කිසි ගණන්කරුවෙකුගේ ගිණුමක් විවෘත කරන පවත්වා ගැනීමේදී සහ ණය මුදලක් ප්‍රදානය කරලා ඒ පවත්වාගෙන යාමේදී එයින් අපේ ආයතනයේ තියෙන අවදානම සහ ඒ අවදානම වල සරිලන ආදායමක් risk and return evaluation එකක් assessment එකක් අපි කරන්නට ඕනේ. ඉතින් මෙතනදී එහෙම කරන්න කියලා regulators ලගේ ව්‍යංගයෙන් තියෙන බලපෑම තමයි, ඔයගොල්ලෝ දන්නවා regulators ලා හැමදාම වසරකට වරක් හෝ කීප වරක් on-site supervision on-site inspection එනවා නේද? ඒ ආපුවම සහ ඒ කාලයට අදාළ ඒ වසරට අදාළ ලාභාලාභ ගිණුම් සහ ශේෂ පත්‍ර අපි සබ්මිට් කරපුවාම එයින් ඒගොල්ලෝ මේ අපේ ආයතනයේ ලාභදායකත්වය පිළිබඳ සොයා බලනවා. යම් කිසි ආයතනයක් ලාභදායකත්වය පිරිහෙනවා නම්, ලාභදායකත්වයේ අඩුවීමක් වෙනවා නම් ඒ පිළිබඳව ඒගොල්ලෝ ප්‍රශ්න කරනවා ඊට පස්සේ. එතනදී තමයි මේ risk and return නැත්නම් අවදානම සහ ඊට සරිලන ආදායම පිළිබඳ සංකල්පය ඒ ආයතනයට අදාළව මහා බැංකුව ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන්නේ. ඉතින් ඒ අනුව අපිට KYC data, CDD data, EDD data regulations වලට යටත්ව අපි ආදායම සහ අවදානම පිළිබඳ අපේ දැක්ම ඒ ගණනකරුවන් වෙනුවෙන් අපි එක සටහන් කරන්නට ඕනේ, සොයා බලන්නට ඕනේ. මෙතනදී සඳහන් කළ වැදගත්ම කාරණය තමයි ඔබ දන්නවා සමහර මල්ටිනේෂනල් බැංක්ස් විශේෂයෙන්ම සහ ලෝකලි දේශීයව තියෙන විශාල බැංකු ආයතන පවා යම් කිසි ගිණුම් සම්බන්ධතා account relationships ලාභදායකත්වයෙන් අඩු නම් ඒ සම්බන්ධව රිස්ක් මැනේජර්ස්ලා විසින් කරන ආවේක්ෂණයකට අනුව පරීක්ෂණ වලට අනුව ඒ රිස්ක් අවදානම අයිඩෙන්ටිෆයි කරලා ඒ අයිඩෙන්ටිෆයි කරපු අවදානම අඩු කර ගැනීමට නැත්නම් මිටිගේට් කරන්නට යෝජනා ඉදිරිපත් කරලා ඒවා ක්‍රියාත්මක කරලා මිටිගේට් කරන්න බැරිම අවදානම් තියෙනවා නම් ඒවා ෂෙයා කරන්න නැත්නම් තවත් කවුරු බෙදා ගන්නට මූල්‍ය උපකරණ මාර්ගයෙන් හෝ වෙනත් ක්‍රම වලින් මැනේජ් කරගන්න උත්සාහ කරලා එහෙමත් බැරි අවස්ථාවලදී අර මම ඉදා සටහන් කරා ඩී-රිස්කින් කියලා ඩී-රිස්කින් කියන ඩී-රිස්කින් කියන කන්සෙප්ට් එකට අනුව ඒ ආදායම අඩු, ඒ කියන්නේ අවදානමට සරිලන ආදායම අඩු සම්බන්ධතා අයින් කරන්නට නැත්නම් exit the relationship කොට කියනවා නම් ඒ ගිණුම් වසාදාවන්නට උත්සුක වෙනවා. ඒ කන්සෙප්ට් එක කියන්නේ ඩී-රිස්කින් කියලා. ඉතින් අන්න ඒ වගේ අවස්ථාවලටත් අපි ඒ අවස්ථාව දක්වා මේ risk and return assessment එක ගෙන යා යුතු වෙනවා. ඉතින් මේ සම්බන්ධයෙන් තව ප්‍රශ්න තියෙනවා නම් අපිට සාකච්ඡා කරන්න පුළුවන්. ප්‍රශ්න තියෙනවා සාකච්ඡා කරන්න පුළුවන්. කොහොම හරි එතනදී customer due diligence CDD process එක සම්බන්ධයෙන් ඔබතුමාලට අවබෝධයක් ඇති. Where pertinent information of customers' profile is collected and evaluated for potential money laundering and terrorist financing risks and evaluation of risk and return. This methodology is known as the risk-based approach. Again, අපි දැනුවත් විදිහට මූල්‍ය ආයතන ඒක ගණනකරුවෝන් හැමදෙනාම ගත්තාම එයින් 80ක් පමණ low risk category එකට අයත් ගණනකරුවෝ. ඊට අමතරව තව 10%ක් හෝ 15ක් පමණ medium risk category එකට අයත් ගණනකරුවෝ. ඒ medium risk category කියන්නේ low risk එකට වඩා වැඩි මට්ටමක risk. ඒ කියන්නේ ඒගොල්ලෝගේ activities වැඩි, ගණන account ගිණුමේ ගණදුණු වැඩි. ඊට පස්සේ ලිමිට් එකක් තියෙනවා නම් ටෙම්පරරි ඕවර්ඩ්‍රාෆ්ට් එකේ මොනවා ලිමිට් එකක් තියෙනවා ඒවන් එතන වගේ අලුත් කිරීමට සිද්ධ වෙනවා. ඊට පස්සේ තව ගණනකරුවෝ 5ක් පමණ ඉන්නවා high risk customers ලා. ඒ අය ගණනු සහ ක්‍රියාකාරකම් තවත් වැඩි. ඊට පස්සේ extremely high risk customers ලා කොටසක් තියෙනවා 2ක් 3ක් පමණ. සමහරට 5ක් පමණ අර politically exposed persons, politically active උදවිය සහ gambling වගේ ආයතන පවත්වාගෙන යන උදවිය. ඉතින් මෙහෙම settled bank එකේ regulations වල අනුව විශේෂයෙන්ම 2018 rule number 1 risk assessment, risk management, KYC, CDD and EDD risk management guideline එක අනුව risk categories 4ක් තියෙනවා. low risk, medium risk, high risk and extremely high risk. මම අද උදේ ෂෙයා කරා ඔයගොල්ලොත් එක්ක ඒ 2018 අංක එක දරන risk assessment guideline එකයි 2016 rule number 1 KYC CDD gazette notification එකයි ඒගොල්ලන්ට ෂෙයා කරලා තියෙනවා උදේ. මේ ඒක ඩවුන්ලෝඩ් කරලා බලන්න පුළුවන්. ඉතින් එතනදී CDD කියන්නේ high risk customers ලාගේ medium risk high risk customers ලාගේ දත්ත customer data අරගෙන සටහන් කරගෙන රෙකෝඩ් කර ගැනීම පිළිබඳව ප්‍රතිපාදන. ඊට පස්සේ EDD කියන්නේ extremely high risk customers due diligence. Politically exposed persons, gamblers වගේ කට්ටියගේ EDD is used to highlight customers as known as those who are more likely to implement activities related to money laundering and terrorist financing due to the nature of their business or transactions. ගොඩක් වෙලාවට NGO ආයතන non-governmental organization ආයතනත් මේ සම්බන්ධයෙන් වැදගත් වෙනවා enhanced due diligence වලට. ඒකට විශේෂ ප්‍රතිපාදන තියෙනවා, regulations තියෙනවා. අර ඒ NGO registry එක නම තියෙන්න ඕනේ. ඒ registry එකේ register කරගන්න NGO ආයතනය කරන ප්‍රධාන කාර්යය සහ පරමාර්ථය purpose එක සටහන් කරලා තියෙන්නට ඕනේ. ඉතින් අපි මුල්‍ය ආයතන විසින් ඒ NGO ආයතනයකට ගිණුමක් විවෘත කරද්දී අපිට අවශ්‍ය regulation එකකින් අනුව අපි ඒ NGO registry එකේ තියෙන නම් සහ purpose එකට අනුකූල වැඩ කරනවාද කියලා අපි සනාථ කරගන්නට ඕනේ. අපි ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ විදිහට NGO ආයතන පිළිබඳව ඉතා මනා උදාහරණ සහ වැටහීම් තියෙනවා. විශේෂයෙන්ම ඔයගොල්ලෝ මතක ඇති TRO කියලා ආයතනයක්, NGO එකක්, Tamil Rehabilitation Organization. කාලයකට ඉස්සර TRO ආයතනය, NGO ආයතනය ස්ථාපිත කරලා තිබුණේ නැගෙනහිර පළාතේ ආබාධිත ගැහැණු දරුවන්ගේ උපස්ථාන කරන්නට පිටවගත ආයතනයක් විදිහට. ඒ ආබාධිත ගැහැණු දරුවන් පුනරුත්ථාපනය වන ස්ථානවලට මූල්‍ය සම්පත් සහ වෙනත් සම්පත් ලබා දෙන්නට පිටු ආයතනයක් විදිහට. හැබැයි කාලයක් යනකොට ඒ TRO NGO එක LTT එකට සම්බන්ධ වෙලා ඒගොල්ලෝ එකතු කරන මුදල් වලින් 80ක් පමණම LTT එකට සංවිධානයට බාර දීලා තිබුණා ඒගොල්ලෝගේ ත්‍රස්තවාදී ක්‍රියා සඳහා. ඒක ඔපුනේ TRO ආයතනයේ උසස් නිලධාරීන් කීප දෙනෙක් ඇමරිකාවේදී ඒරෝප්ලේන් පාර්ට්ස් හොයන්නට ගිහිල්ලා ඒ FBI එක සොයාගෙන අපේ ශ්‍රී ලංකා රජයට දැනුම් කරලා තිබුණා මෙන්න මේ විදිහට සිද්ධ වුණා කියලා. එතනදී ශ්‍රී ලංකා රජය විස්තර හොයාගෙන යනකොට TRO ආයතනය කරපු ක්‍රියාකාරකම් පැහැදිලි වුණා. ඒ අනුව TRO ආයතනයේ තහනම් කරන්නටත් TRO ආයතනයේ පාතාවන්ගේ බැංකු ගිණුම් ෆ්‍රීස් කරන්නටත් නියම කරා FIU ආයතනය සහ ආරක්ෂා අමාත්‍යාංශය. ඒ වෙනකොට ලංකාවේ තිබුණ හැම බැංකුවකම වගේ TRO ආයතනයේ ගිණුම් තිබුණා. ඒ TRO ආයතනයේ ගිණුම් වල තිබුණ ශේෂයන් එකතුව ගත්තත් එහෙම රුපියල් බිලියන 21ක් තවද තිබුණා. සීස් කරාට පස්සේ. ඉතින් සමහර බැංකු ආයතන වලට විශාල දුෂ්කර ක්‍රියාමාර්ගයක් ගන්නට සිද්ධ වුණා. TRO ආයතනයේ ගිණුම් වල KYC data CID එකට බාර දෙන්න. හැබැයි පිළිවෙලකට KYC data ස්ටෝර් කරලා ආකයිව් කරලා තිබ්බා ආයතන වලට ඒක ප්‍රශ්නයක් වුණේ නැහැ. දැන් මම දන්නවා කීප බැංකු අපේ විශාල බැංකු කීපයකට ඒ සම්බන්ධයෙන් විශාල ගැටලු පැන නග්ගා. ඒ KYC data වල CID පරීක්ෂකවරුන්ට බාර දෙන්නට. ඉතින් මෙතනදී අවසාන වශයෙන් අපේ අසයින්මන්ට් එකට අදාළව කිව යුත්තේ මේ KYC CDD EDD ක්‍රියා පිළිබඳ තියෙන රෙගුලේෂන් සහ අවශ්‍යතාවය අනුව රෙකෝඩ් කරලා ගණනකරුවෝ නියමාකාරව හඳුනාගෙන ඒ හඳුනාගත්ත account relationship මාර්ගයෙන් තැන්පතු relationship සහ loans and advances relationships වල මාර්ගයෙන් තම ආයතනයේ ලාභදායකත්වය රැක ගැනීම සහ තම ආයතනයේ reputation එක නැත්තම් ප්‍රසිද්ධ image එක වර්ධනය කර ගැනීමේ හැකියාවත් එහෙම නැත්තම් යම් කිසි විදියකින් KYC data එකතු කරගෙන නොගෙන අපකීර්තියට සහ reputation එක අඩු කරගත් අවස්ථා පිළිබඳව අපි හොදාකාරව දන්නවා මේ මෑතකදී මහ බැංකුව විසින් නියම කරන ලද දඩ මුදල් පවා ප්‍රසිද්ධියට පත් කරලා තියෙනවා. ඒ උදාහරණ වලට සටහන් කරන්න පුළුවන් අසයින්මන්ට් එකේදී. ඊට අමතරව ආයතනයේ දියුණුව සහ ප්‍රවර්ධනයට හේතු වන reputation එක ආරක්ෂා කර ගැනීමත් KYC data සහ CDD data සහ EDD data නියමානුකූලව වාර්තා කරගෙන ආකයිව් කරගෙන රෙකෝඩ් කරගත් ආයතන විදිහට තම reputation එක වර්ධනය කරගත හැකි අවස්ථාවට අමතරව ආර්ථිකයට යම් කිසි ධනාත්මක ස්වරූපයකින් ධනාත්මක contribution එකක් ලබා දිය හැකි බව පසුගිය සමීක්ෂණ වලින් ඉතා පැහැදිලිව ඔප්පු වෙලා තියෙනවා. ඒ කියන්නේ කාලයක් ඇතුළත ඒ ගණනකරුවෝ යහමින් අඳුනාගෙන ඒ ගණනකරුවෝගේ උපය ගන්න මුදල් සහ ඒ ගණනකරුවෝ තාකාත් එක්කද ගණනු කරන KYCC know your customers customer සහ අපේ ගණනකරුවන් ගණනු කරන methods පිළිබඳ අවබෝධයක් ඇතුව අපේ ව්‍යාපාර මෙහෙයවුවොත් එතනදී ආර්ථිකයට ඇතිවන ධනාත්මක බලපෑම ඉතා විශාලයි. ඒ සම්බන්ධයෙන් කලින් කරපු පරීක්ෂණ සහ රිසර්ච් පේපර්ස් තියෙනවා. ඒවා පරිශීලනය කරලා ඒවත් ආධාරයට අරගෙන අසයින්මන්ට් එක KYC CDD EDD data යථානුකූලව සටහන් කර ගැනීමෙන් ඇතිවන යහපත් බලපෑම ඒකට මේ සම්බන්ධයෙන් ඇතිවන පිරිවැය කොස්ට් එකට කෙටි කාලීනව කොස්ට් එක වැඩි වෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ වුණත් මධ්‍ය කාලීන සහ දීර්ඝ කාලීනව ඒ පිරිවැය සහ කොස්ට් එකට වඩා වැඩිම නම් ලාභයක් සහ ආයතනයේ ලාභයක් සහ ආයතනයේ ප්‍රගතියට ප්‍රවර්ධනයට රුකුලක් ඒ අතරතුර ආර්ථිකයට ඉතා වැදගත් ධනාත්මක බලපෑමක් ඇති වෙන බව ඔප්පු වෙලා තියෙනවා. ඉතින් ඒ අනුව තමයි අසයින්මන්ට් එකකට කරුණු හොයලා රිසර්ච් කරලා සටහන් කළ යුත්තේ. The task description is critically analyze regulatory requirements of KYC, CDD, EDD, and the impact on the performance of the financial institution. Conclude the analysis with recommendations for improvement for the future, ideally with synergy between regulators and financial institutions, avoiding disadvantages, avoiding තවපොඩි වචන කීපයක් අඩු වේදන. අපි දැන් ඉස්සර සටහන් කරපු බ්ලොක්චේන් සහ එහෙම නැත්නම් වෙනම ඩෙඩිකේටඩ් ආයතනයක් KYC data සටහන් කර ගැනීමට ක්‍රිබ් වගේ ඩෙඩිකේටඩ් ආයතනයක් සටහන් කර ඇති කිරීම පිළිබඳවත් සටහන් කරලා එයින් ඇතිවන ධනාත්මක බලපෑම විස්තර කරොත් මතන්නේ ඔයගොල්ලන්ගේ අසයින්මන්ට් එක ඉතා සාර්ථක වෙයි. මේ අසයින්මන්ට් එකට ඔයගොල්ලෝ මේ ඩිප්ලෝමා එක සඳහා කම්ප්ලයින්ස් ඩිප්ලෝමා සඳහා අසයින්මන්ට් එකට ලකුණු 30ක් දෙන්න කියලා තමයි ප්‍රොස්පෙක්ටස් එකේ තියෙන්නේ. ඒනොට මේ කාලේ මේ කොවිඩ් බලපෑම තියෙන මේ කාලේ වෙනත් යුනිවර්සිටිස් වල නම් assignment research කරලා කරන ලියන assignment වලට 50ක් දක්වා ලකුණු දෙනවා. ඉතින් මමත් ඒ පිළිබඳව බැංකු කරවන්ගේ ආයතන ඉන්ස්ටිටියුට් බැංක් එක සාකච්ඡා කරනවා. ඊට අමතරව අපිට වැදගත් දේ තමයි මේ සඳහා මේ පොත්පත් ජර්නල්ස් සහ වෙබ්සයිට්ස් පරිශීලනය කරලා ඉතා සාර්ථක රිසර්ච් පේපර් එකක් නැත්නම් අසයින්මන්ට් එකක් සටහන් කරගන්න කියලා. ඉතින් මේ සම්බන්ධයෙන් මම suggested paragraph කියලා කොටසක් දීලා තියෙනවා. Acknowledgement, executive summary, content page වලට අමතරව introduction, regulations and parliament acts කියලා list කරන්න පුළුවන් ඔයගොල්ලන්ට තියෙන parliament acts. FIU regulations. It was compliance policy, recent penalties and imposed by the FIU, market best practices. That's very වැදගත්. Market best practices උත් හරි වැදගත්. ඊට පස්සේ mindfulness කියන එක මම තනි වචනයක් දැම්ම වුණාට ඒකේ ලොකු අර්ථයක් තියෙනවා. මේ parliament act සහ regulations වලින් බලාපොරොත්තු වන දේ පිළිබඳව යම්කිසි අවබෝධයකින් මේ KYC CDD EDD කටයුතු මෙහෙවන්නට ඕන කියන එකයි mindfulness එකෙන් කියන්නේ. mindfulness එකෙන් අදහස් වෙන්නේ අංශක 360ක දත්ත පරිශීලනය කරගෙන ඒවා ඇත්ත සැටියෙන්ම සහ නීති රීතිවල සටහන් කරලා තියෙන විදිහට නියමානුකූලව ප්‍රායෝගිකව ඒ දත්ත KYC දත්ත ප්‍රයෝජනට ගැනීමයි. මම එදා උදාහරණයක් සටහන් කරා. අපේ එක ප්‍රසිද්ධ හාමුදුරුවෝ නමක් බණකට කියපු උදාහරණයක්. එක උපාසකම්මා කෙනෙක් නිතරම වගේ භාවනා වැඩසටහන් වල සහභාගී වෙලා ගෙදර එනකොට භාවනා වැඩසටහන සාමාන්‍ය සතියක් දවස් 10ක් දවස් 14ක් එක දිගට දවස් 21ක් එක දිගට භාවනා වැඩසටහන් කරලා එන ගෙදරට එනකොට ගෙදර හොරු බෙදලා බඩු නැතිලා හොරු බෙදලා බඩු අරන් ගිහලා හොරු. ඉතින් මේ උපාසකම්ම කල්පනා කරලා වොචර් කෙනෙක් ගත්තා. කම්පැනි එකකින් වොචර් කෙනෙක් අරගෙන ගේ බලා ගන්න කියලා ගේ හොඳට බලා ගන්න කියලා මෙයා භාවනාවට වැඩසටහන් වලට ගිහිල්ලා. මෙයා නැවත භාවනාවට ගිහිල්ලා එනකොට ඒ හොරු කඩලා ගේ හොරු බෙදලා බඩු අරන් ගිහලා හැබැයි වොචර් ඉන්නවා. ඉතින් වොචර් ගෙන් අහපුවා අයියෝ මොනවද කරේ මේ මට කිව්ව බලා ගන්න කියලා මම ඉතින් බලාගෙන හිටියා කිව්වා. හොරු ඇවිල්ලා ගේ බෙදලා බඩු අරන් යනකම් එයා වොචර් බලාගෙන ඉඳලා. ඉතින් නීති රීතියට එයාගේ නම වොචර් එයාගේ තනතුර වොචර් එක වුණාට එයා අතනම එයාගේ බලාපොරොත්තු වන කාර්යය තමයි අර ආපදාවක් හොරකම වැළැක්වීම. හැබැයි එයා නීති රීති වලට අනුව ගිහිල්ලා අපේ දැන් සමහර ආයතන කරනවා වගේ දත්ත KYC දත්ත සටහන් කරලා තියාගෙන ඉන්නවා. හැබැයි බිස්නස් ගණදෙනු ව්‍යාපාර ගණදෙනු කරද්දී ඒ ගණදෙනු කරුවට අදාළව ඒවා හරියට ප්‍රායෝගිකව පරිශීලනය කරනවාද කියන එකයි විශාල ප්‍රශ්නාර්ථයක් තියෙනවා. අන්න ඒකයි මයින්ඩ්ෆුල්නස් කියන එකෙන් අදහස් කරන්නේ. ඉතින් facilitating customer transactions මේ KYC දත්ත උපයෝගී කරගෙන ඒවායින් ලැබෙන තොරතුරු සහ වගතුග ප්‍රයෝජනට අරගෙන අපේ ව්‍යාපාර කටයුතු දිනු කර ගන්නවා මිසක් ව්‍යාපාර කටයුතු ආරක්ෂා කරගෙන දිනු කර ගන්නවා මිසක් ඒවා නිකන් සටහන් කර ගැනීම තබා පමණක් කර ගැනීම සටහන් කර තබා ගැනීම පමණක් නම් කරන්නේ ඒ ඉතින් ප්‍රතිඵලයක් ප්‍රගතියක් එන්නේ නැහැ. ඊට පස්සේ new developers ගැන අපි KYC blockchain ගැන ගොඩාක් කතා කරා. contribution to the economy ගැන කතා කරන්න පුළුවන් ගොඩාක්. අපේ ඇත්තටම කතා කරනකොට නම් ඕනෑම පුද්ගලයෙක් තමන්ට රැකියාවක් අවශ්‍ය වුණාම විවිධ ප්‍රබල පුද්ගලයන් පස්සේ ගිහිල්ලා රැකියාව ලබා ගන්නවා. රැකියාව ලබාගෙන මතර වේතනයක් අරගෙන තමන්ගේ බඩ වියද පමණ රැකගෙන ඉන්නවා. හැබැයි තමන්ගෙන් විය යුතු රාජකාරිය කොහොමද කියලා සොයා බලන්න නැතුව හරියට ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන්න නැතුව හැමෝම රැකියාවල යෙදෙන උදවිය විශේෂම උසස් නිලධාරීන් රැකියාව කරන උදවිය තමන්ගේ තනතුරට සිදුවිය යුතු සාධාරණය හරියට ඉෂ්ට කරනවා නම් මේ contribution to economy කියන එක ඉතා ප්‍රබලව වර්ධනය විය යුතුයි. අපේ ආර්ථිකය වර්ධනය විය යුතුයි ඉතා ප්‍රබලව. හැබැයි ගොඩක් දෙනෙක් තමන්ට ලැබෙන වරප්‍රසාද සහ වේතන ගැන පමණක් සටන් පාට කියන පමණයි. අන්න ඒ තත්ත්වය KYC data සම්බන්ධයෙන් යම් තාදුරට බලපෑම ඇති කරනවා. ඊට පස්සේ conclusion දා list of references. අනේ විදිහට assignment එක හැකිතරක් සාර්ථකව නිමා කරලා ජූනි 30 වෙනිදාට කලින් බැංකුවරුන්ගේ ආයතනයට ඉන්ස්ටිටියුට් බැංකර්ස්ට එවන්න අර සටහන් කරපු ඊමේල් ඇඩ්‍රස් දෙකට අපි ඒ අතරතුර හැමට පුළුවන් ඕනම අවස්ථාවකදී මට ඔබ කරපු assignment එක රිසර්ච් කරලා කරපු ප්‍රමාණය මට නිතර එවන්න. මම මගේ කමෙන්ට්ස් දාලා ආපහු නැවත ඔබට එවන්නම්. එතකොට අවසානයේදී ඒක සාර්ථක assignment එකක් අපිට දැක ගන්න පුළුවන් වේවි. හොඳයි, ඒ සම්බන්ධයෙන් ප්‍රශ්න තියෙනවද මොනවද? එහෙම නැත්නම් අපි ඊළඟ presentation එකට යමු. On this presentation I did some updates and it is also hosted today, and these slides we covered last I should explain this slide also a little bit in Sinhala. මේ slide එකෙන් අදහස් වෙන්නේ අපේ compliance විෂයට අදාළව තියෙන regulations සහ parliament act සම්බන්ධයෙන් සරල evaluation එකක්. මේන් අභ්‍යන්තර regulations සහ බාහිර regulations කියලා කොටස් දෙකකට බෙදුවොත් බාහිර regulations තමයි මේ parliament act සහ central banking අපිට ඒවල තියෙන ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ directions සහ gazette notifications සහ guidelines. අභ්‍යන්තර regulations තමයි අපේ shareholdersලා ගේ නියෝජිතය වන අධ්‍යක්ෂ මණ්ඩලය සහ senior management එක විසින් අපිට නිකුත් කරලා තියෙන උපදේශ මාලාවන් සහ regulations, internal අභ්‍යන්තර regulations. ඉතින් මෙතනදී මගේ ප්‍රායෝගික දැනුම අනුව මම 2003 වසරේ ඉඳලම compliance subject එක handle කරපු කෙනෙක්. ඒක නිසා අනික හර්නාශි බැංකුවේත් කාග්නිස් බැංකුවේත් head of compliance විදිහට වැඩ කරපු කෙනෙක්. ඒක නිසා ඊට අමතරව compliance association එකේ chairman post එකත් කරා අවුරුදු 4-5ක්. ඒක නිසා මගේ දැනුම අනුව මේ parliament acts සහ gazette notification FIU regulations වලට තියෙන ඒ regulations වල තියෙන email safety යට අදාළව තියෙන regulations බර තැබුවොත් 40% පමණ වෙයි. අපේ සාපේක්ෂව අභ්‍යන්තර regulations වල board of directors සහ senior management වලින් අපිට ලැබෙන අභ්‍යන්තර regulations 60% පමණ වෙයි කියලා ඇස්තමේන්තුවක් තමයි මට ඉදිරිපත් කරන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්නේ. මෙතනදී අපි බාහිර regulations සහ ප්‍රතිපාදන වලට අනුගත වීම ඉතා වැදගත්. ඒකේ ප්‍රශ්න දෙකක් නැහැ, ඉතා වැදගත්. ඒ හැම රූල් එකක්ම හැම ප්‍රතිපාදනයක්ම අපි අනුගත විය යුතුයි. ඊට වඩා අභ්‍යන්තර rules and regulations වලට විශේෂයෙන්ම shareholders ලගේ wealth එක සහ නැත්නම් ලාභදායකත්වය වැඩ කර ගැනීමේ උත්සාහයට අදාළව director board එකකින් ලැබෙන උපදෙස් සහ directions senior management ලැබෙන උපදෙස් වලට අපි අනුගත නොවුනොත් අපේ compliance function එක අපේ බැංකුවේ හෝ මූල්‍ය ආයතනයේ මූල්‍ය සමාගමේ කළමනාකාරීත්වය අතරින් ඝට්ටනයකට භාජන වෙනවා. There will be a friction. මේ සමතතාවයෙන් කළමනා කරන ටීම් එකේ මැනේජ්මන්ට් ටීම් එකේ සමාජිකයෙක් වීම සහ ඒට අදාළ සාමූහික වගකීම compliance officer විදියට තියෙන සාමූහික වගකීම අනුව මේ regulations වලට අනුගත වීම ඉතා වැදගත්. යම් විදියකින් ටීම් වර්ක් එකක් නැත්තම් අපේ senior management team එකත් එක්ක board of directors ත් එක්ක තියෙන team effort එක නැත්නම් අපේ ආයතන ඉදිරියට යන්න බෑ. ඒක නිසා මේ 60% නීති රීති ප්‍රතිපාදන උපදෙස් වලට අනුකූලව අනුගත වීම ඉතාම වැදගත්. ඒක තමයි මට සිංහලෙන් කියන්න අවශ්‍ය වුණේ. ඔය assignment එකට වැදගත් වෙන්න විදිහට තව ප්‍රශ්න තියෙනවා නම් නොතේරෙනවා තියෙනවා අහන්න පුළුවන්. ඒක ඔක්කොම අපි කතා කරා. We discuss all these things I think up to this page. Up to this page we discussed the US Patriot Act and the US FATCA. Remember? Yes. So today, as we discussed a while ago, Financial Action Task Force is a world body, and through their 40 recommendations to the world, they command the regulations and stipulations for the well-being of the financial institutions, including banks. And there is the APG, Asia Pacific Group for Money Laundering, the regional body under the FATF umbrella. Asia Pacific Group, Sri Lanka is under Asia Pacific. So the Asia Pacific Group also has strategic plan, annual business plan and assessment methodology, which you can read if you log into the APG's website. And as I disclosed, there is an endeavor by APG to do mystery shopping They send their officers to the financial institutions in every country in the Asia Pacific region and evaluate the standard of compliance, particularly in the KYC and compliance to other specific recommendations by the FATF, and they submit their report to the local regulator as well as their head officers to compile their reports on the country. So as for Sri Lanka, the APG's ranking had not been very satisfactory. About the banking institutions compliance, comparatively, the compliance level of standard of compliance has been satisfactory. But of course, when it comes to the finance companies, standard of compliance to the regulations had not that been satisfactory. So therefore, the country ranking had been lower to date. So if we are to improve the level of standard of compliance to the FATF recommendations and earn a positive report, acceptable positive report from the APG's annual reporting on the country, particularly the finance companies will have to standardize their compliance to the recommendations and then help Sri Lanka obtain a satisfactory report from the APG. So based on the recommendations of FATF, Sri Lanka brought in these three main Parliament Acts, namely Convention of Suppression of Financing of Terrorism Act 2005, Act number 25 of 2005, then Prevention of Money Laundering Act number 5 of 2006, Financial Transaction Reporting Act number 6 of 2006. FIU was established, implemented, and then is being maintained now under the FTRA, under the provisions of the FTRA. You know, prior to 2006, for about a decade, the bankers have been agitating with the central bank to pass these Parliament Acts in the Parliament, through the Parliament, and then obtain legality or include the muscle of legal, include the legal muscle for the bankers to practice the international trade and then maintenance of correspondent banks with the foreign countries. Because up until 2006, for about a decade or more, the bankers were really handicapped when it came to maintaining the correspondent bank relationships, nosto accounts, and then engaging in international trade with foreign countries when we did not have these three Parliament Acts and legal provisions, making money laundering and terrorist financing a criminal offense. So that was a necessity under the FATF recommendations. And Sri Lanka was brandished that Sri Lanka does not have legal background criminalizing money laundering and terrorist financing. Therefore, bankers who engage in provision of international trade services to the customers were really handicapped. So finally, if I can remember right, after 11 long years of agitation, the Parliament passed these three Parliament Acts within 10 minutes. because the fact that they were well drafted documents, legal acts, and there were back and forth corrections for 11 long years. And the Parliament in 2006 passed these 3 Parliament Acts within a very short period of time. And under the FTRA, FIU then issued minimum standard rules issued by the FIU in May 2007. Basically, minimum standard of KYC to be obtained and various other provisions. So these are regulatory framework in Sri Lanka at the moment, and then of course subsequent gazette notifications, and there are other various directions and which we will discuss in due course. CDD rules number 1 of 2006 on January 27, 2016 is another key direction asking all the financial institutions to evaluate the risk of customers going by the KYC, CDD and EDD data. Then Financial Customer Protection Framework as Finance Business Act Direction number 1 of 2018 for finance companies, and then guidelines on money laundering and financial risk management for financial institutions dated 11th of January 2018, where the risk assessment process is described. After this few more slides, I will, if time permits today, we'll go through the risk assessment process as required by these 2, particularly CDD rules number 1 of 2016 and guidelines on money laundering and financial risk assessment for financial institutions dated 11th January 2018. Very important. I have a separate few slides for that. I think I have asked Menaka to host it on the Google Classroom. You can download it and read it. So this is the risk assessment, and ascertaining the risk versus return can be done through a model. And whether to, first of all, to be compliant with the FATF recommendations and the local regulations, Parliament Acts, plus to ascertain whether the particular relationship is incommensurate with the risk that the bank or finance company undertake, or in short, whether it is profitable. We'll discuss that later on. Then came the Foreign Exchange Act number 12 of 2017. Before that, it was Exchange Control Act 1953. The main difference between these two is that Exchange Control Act looked at the preserving the foreign exchange or foreign reserves of this country in a controlling aspect. What was the result of that? When the regulator was trying to control the reserves, foreign assets of this country, foreigners who wanted to invest in this country as foreign direct investments did not come to the country, did not bring their money into this country, because the avenues for them to take back whatever the investment the foreign direct investments, when they want to take back, it was subject to the exchange control regulations. So therefore, juridically, the government and the central bank came out with various type of accounts facilitating the FDIs, foreign direct investment, we brought to the country. I think the oldest I can remember was Sierra accounts, Share Investment External Rupee account for the money brought in to invest in the Colombo Stock Exchange. And when the money was, foreign currency was brought into the country through this Share Investment External Rupee accounts, maintained with the banks, they were able to take it back, the amount that they took, they brought into the country, and the profit or the dividends that they earned. Later on, I think latest is that inward investment accounts. Inward investment account, when foreigners or Sri Lankans living abroad bring foreign currency to the country through the inward investment account, they can take back the amount that they brought in to the country, inward investment account. The latest development is that special deposit account, isn't it? Foreign currency SDA, special deposit accounts. So central bank and the government took steps to cancel or delete the Foreign Exchange Control Act, Foreign Exchange Control Act, 1953, and they implemented Foreign Exchange Act number 12 of 2017. Foreign Exchange Act number 12 of 2017. We can discuss a little more in detail when we come to that. Foreign Exchange Act number 12 of 2017 also has the provisions, gives the provisions to appoint dedicated foreign exchange dealers, So we'll discuss that later in due course. We shall discuss under the CDS, custom due diligence criteria, the types of transactions that the financial institutions are transacting with the customers. I think I invite you to make your comments and suggestions or amendments. Now, the type of transaction that I think that a bank or finance company handles with the customers belongs to accepting of deposits, withdrawals by a customer, approval and granting of loans, outward remittances on behalf of the customer to other financial institutions or other countries, then inward remittances in favor of our customer, accepting inward remittances from other banks, locally or overseas, inward remittances. Then buying foreign currency notes, selling foreign currency notes. Are we clear that we have summarized all our transactions into these 7 categories? And the responsibility of the financial institution is that customer due diligence, gathering factual information and assessing risks, including money laundering and terrorist financing on these transactions. Can anyone suggest that I have missed anything? Or does anyone want to include something else or amend one of these to reflect more accurate picture?
So
Yes.
the trade business activities, trade operations.
Trade means international trade.
Yes.
So international trade, if it is exports, will be buying foreign currency notes. I can delete the word notes so that I can include the exports, and selling foreign currency I can include delete the word notes and then include the imports. And then also the trade can be also, in the case of exports, inward remittances. In the case of exports, it can be outward remittances.
So the thing is,
Yes.
so when it comes to trade-based money laundering is a critical part, no?
Understood.
So then the notes and all,
Yes.
I feel that trade money laundering activity is a critical part of the bank institution, no?
Yes, but in international trade, because of the formalities involved, and then also going by the form of Exchange Control Act, the validations required and reporting required, and also when it came to the international trade, communicating between different countries and between different banks, the set of rules, the Incoterms and other specific terms to be used because of the different languages being used in different countries, and then also mainly because of the SWIFT message, MT700 SWIFT message involved in communicating the letter of credit. The particular fields that are to be populated accurately. I know technically it is someone can think that it is a different transaction altogether, but the bottom line is, when it is exports, you collect the foreign currency or receive the foreign exchange or buy the foreign exchange from the customer. When it imports, you sell the foreign currency or effect outward remittances. Am I wrong in coming to the conclusion?
I feel, sir, agree to your points, sir.
Yes.
But say when it comes to a bank level of operation,
yes,
the what called the KYC and everything, like the scrutinization of the particular transaction activity is done at the front end of the trade unit.
Agreed.
Yeah,
Agreed.
but the remittance process is happening at a centralized point of a banking institution.
Yes.
So every like KYC and the scrutinizing process happens at the business front. So even this remittance unit inquire from the particular business unit what is the underlying transaction.
Yes.
So considering that,
Yes.
I feel that trade business has to be taken as a separate transaction, which is a critical transaction to be scrutinized.
Yes, there's a very no doubt there's a clear segregation.
Yes.
Now, how would you look at the open account transactions, open account trade? Open account trade is a one method of international trade, isn't it?
Yes.
Open account trade will definitely culminate into one of the outer remittances or inner remittances.
Yes. Okay.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Because under the four methods of payments under international trades, open account trade is the most popular, and then improving. The volumes are improving on open account trade, mainly because the counterparties, the exporter and the importer, or the buyer and the seller, is known to each other for a very long period of time, or they are part of the same group of companies or same company, branch of the same company. So therefore, they indulge in open account trade.
Yes.
So when you take that example into consideration, the formalities that one bank or one finance company has to undertake when if it is imports or exports, you can clearly segregate the formalities part of it, the adhering to Incoterms and other using the correct terms and all sort of things, and then using the correct type of Swift message to communicate the transaction. Those are formalities.
Yes.
So therefore, the underlying transaction, I think, fall well within one of these four.
Got it.
Do you still have some confusion or?
No, sir. Now I have clarified because I can understand, because the most of the transaction either involves on the mainly involves in the remittances activities.
Yes.
But I felt I had a doubt, like the trade business operation is the one meeting the customer, and the scrutinizing of the KYC activities done at that front end.
I see.
So considering that only, I had that doubt.
So
Thanks.
Thanks very much for your concern and then the clarification. A lot of other parties also learned about more things on that. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, sir.
And then also I'll be covering the trade money laundering and terrorist financing related to trade finance at a later presentation. Like over-invoicing, under-invoicing, and all that will be covered. So therefore, your bringing this point at this time opens the eyes of many, and then enhances the knowledge for many. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. May I know your name, please?
Tilivan Kandasamy.
I'm Kandasamy. Yes.
Okay.
You are working for one of the banks, or?
Yes, Spanish bank.
Very good, Mr. Kandasamy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
So I also have some clarification on this. May I speak?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Yeah, actually, this is regarding the same issue as you say that it is open account transaction.
Yes.
Of course, as you see now, assume the person is doing this transaction on assume that it is for purchasing of weapons or investing for any illegal activity. So at that point only that the transaction has to be highlighted and restricted about happening the transaction. So otherwise, assume that if it is happened and we want to make a payment there later on, so we have to proceed on the payment and go ahead. But before that, only we can make a regulations and impose some controls there to restrict of some sort of transactions. So if we just formulate this CDD transaction recovering as just buying and selling of foreign currencies, how can we implement these particular controls there?
Yes, for different products that I would thank you very much for the highlighting of this particular point. Different products like imports and exports, and then inward clean remittances, outward clean remittances. Now, just a while ago, we spoke of inward investment accounts and then also outward investment accounts. All those are transactions of foreign currency. And then also the now NRC, now known as PFC accounts, and then most popular products these days, special deposit accounts. All those. Now, what I meant is, under the thorough understanding of transactions concluded by the financial institutions, if we are to broadly summarize those transactions to facilitate our understanding of gathering factual information and assessing the risks, including money laundering and terrorist financing, the one has to figure out what are we doing on behalf of the customer at this particular point in time. It is either accepting a deposit, it is either withdrawing from an account by the customer, granting a loan, an outward remittance, or inward remittance, or buying foreign currency or selling foreign currency. And then now, in your argument, when granting a loan, one can argue leasing is a different transaction and TOD is another transaction. POD is another transaction. Housing loan is another transaction. So likewise, what I'm trying to inculcate the better understanding among the participants here is to bring out the underlying transaction, underlying activity that we are doing. Yes, when it comes to the latter stage, when we want to discuss the international trade, money laundering and terrorist finance part of it, we will discuss all those mechanisms. But at this point in time, other than the underlying transaction of exchange of foreign currency, and or if it is a local LC denominated in rupees itself, domestic LCs and domestic trade transactions, again, it can fall into one of these, outer or inward remittances. Did I answer your question, my dear?
What I thought here was, now you can rectify me if I am wrong. So
Yes.
Assume that example of granting of loan. So that means assume it is like foreign trade as well. So before they are granting the loan, so we have to see the purpose of serving the loans and purpose of giving this facility. Otherwise, after we approving and granting the facility there, if that customer is misusing that fund for any terrorist activity or sorry, that regarding this drugs case or anything, so
Yes.
then there might be a repercussions to the financial institution.
Exactly right. You're 100% spot on. Now, the understanding the purpose of the transaction when granting a loan is one of the KYCs. In fact, when the amount of the KYCs, amount of KYC data assimilated or required by a financial institution from a customer on a liability product like a deposit, and then also amount of the KYC data required by a financial institution from a customer for asset product, loan, any type of loan products, including leasing and any other product that you mentioned. For the loan products, there is at least 2 specific KYC data more than the liability products, because the bank or financial institution is handing over the amount of money to the customer, granting money. In this case, debtor will be the customer, creditor will be the bank. But in the liability product, debtor will be the bank and creditor will be the customer. Did you understand that? In the,
Yes,
in the case of a deposit product, who is the debtor? The bank. The creditor is the customer. But in the case of asset product, debtor is the customer and the creditor is the bank. So therefore, for asset products, the one main differentiation is that the bank has to have the real purpose of the loan that they are going to grant, and adherence and the accuracy of that purpose in utilization of funds by the customer. That's one of the key differentiations between the liability products. Now, it's true that for liability deposit products, also the purpose of opening account has to be obtained and recorded. But for each transaction, sometimes the financial institution might not harp on obtaining the accurate purpose of the deposit. But for each loan product, each loan installment, or each loan disbursement, the bank or the financial institution will want to know whether actually this money is being used for this purpose, because that is going to be materially important for the recovery of the loan. If the customer says one thing and utilize the funds for something else, it is very dicey, and then it is very liquid, and then the certainty of recovery is going to be that uncertain. So therefore, one of the key KYC factors to be obtained in the case of asset products is the purpose of the individual transaction, individual loan. So therefore, this is thanks very much for the highlighting all these facts, because everybody is learning, including myself. Everybody's learning. But my endeavor here was to arouse your concern that all the transactions, the bottom line of the transactions are engulfed in these 7 bullet points. I'm very free to add anything more or amend anything here, but it's what we wanted here is to understand, so that your gathering of KYC data, CDD data, EDD data is going to be that meaningful in practical terms. I hope you got the message.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Very good. Very good. I'm very happy. There's some concerns, and finally, the financial institutions' purpose of transaction is understood by everyone, meaning to that extent, gathering of KYC, CDD, EDD is going to be meaningful when you are in office and when you are behind the desk and meeting a customer. All right? Okay, so are there any more questions, please? Yes? Other questions? No? Okay, we'll go to the next slide. Performing CDD or EDD to make sure you know your customer. CDD, customer due diligence, critical element to manage risk, to ensure protection to you and your business. This says that your base or basic is KYC. One can also say KYC C, customer's customer. In fact, under the directions now, when you are establishing account relationship with the customer, when you are asking for your list of counterparties with whom you will be dealing, with whom you will be transacting, that is know your customer's customer. But that does not limit yourself to the name given or listed with whom that your customer can do business. No, they are free to do business with anyone. But the new names that are coming up can add on to your KYCC list, customer list, or names of customers with whom they are going to do business. So CDD, critical element to manage risk, the additional information to manage risk to ensure protection to you and your business. CDD is identifying your customer and understanding their activities to enable you to assess their risk profile. The risk manager will want to categorize this particular customer under low risk, medium risk, high risk, or extremely high risk, as per the rule number 1 of 2018. So therefore, assessing the risk profile is also under CDD. EDD, when it comes to enhanced due diligence, collecting additional information needed from high-risk customers to provide a deeper understanding of customer activity to mitigate risks. Now, when it comes to enhanced due diligence, we are particularly speaking of high-risk categories of customers, namely the politically exposed persons, politically active people, their relatives, their acquaintances, family members, bureaucrats, by using their position, who would be possibly or probably engaging in socially unfriendly activities such as extortion, embezzlement, bribe taking, and so on and so forth.
So when it comes to PEPs,
Yes.
so unless otherwise the particular customer disclose his profile, the institution, banking institution, is not in a position to identify that PEP, no? Or the related parties.
True, I understand that, but very well, customer has all the basic human right to walk into a banking institution, branch of a bank or a finance company, to ask for banking services, and it's a human right. And then the right to ask particular question, and then also giving him account application form, asking him to complete it, and then judging the accuracy of such disclosed information is up to the banker or the executive of the finance company. But at the same time, the knowledge expected out of this financial professional, the bank officer or the finance company officer, is far above the normal citizen here. Now, there is wide information around, you know who the president of Sri Lanka, you know who the prime minister, you know who the minister, cabinet of ministers. They are public information. You know who are the members of parliament, you know who are the Pradesh Sabha members. They are, I know for a fact, few institutions try to hook up or connect with the Secretary General of Parliament to validate their customer base with the names and addresses of the politically active persons. So therefore, Now, when it comes to PEPs, merely what is recorded at the Secretary General of Parliament may not be adequate. But still, there can be an effort made to know who the active politicians are. And the fact that the bank branches and the branch of finance companies are located in a geographical area, in that particular vicinity, you know who are the key figures in the society who would be commanding the respect of the society, and who can be influential in making some changes for the general public. And also whether there is a possibility of exploitation by such powerful people in that area, other than a valid economic activity, a trade, a production, consumption of goods or services. Other than that, any transaction that can take place without adding economic value to the economy or the parties concerned, economic value for the parties involved, the giver and the taker, recipient and the payer. That is what is expected out of the so-called knowledgeable person behind the counter, wearing the hat of a bank officer or executive of a finance company. So politically active persons, it is a tremendous difficult task to perform. But however, it is the degree up to which it can be performed may differ to individuals and individual institutions as well. But however, there should be an endeavor and effort made towards that. That is what is meant by these regulations. Does that complete?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Is there any source available to identify such people?
Yes. Now, as I indicated, if you can connect with the Secretary General of Parliament, I think they are willing to cooperate, knowing the fact that the bad names brought in by these public figures, they are willing to cooperate. This is my personal involvement when I was a compliance officer for certain banks. My personal involvement is proof that they are ready and willing to get involved with the financial institutions to gather such information. Now, this is one other advantage in creating a separate entity to house the KYC data of for all the banks and finance companies to be identified by the NIC, a dedicated institution. That institution their computers can hook up with the Department of Persons Registration of Persons, who issue the NIC, and the Immigration Passport Office, and then also Parliament, Secretary General of Parliament, and then also sometimes Department of Public Administration, who may be responsible to appoint the governors and the provincial secretaries and other public officers. That can be really a facilitator to enable the financial houses, financial institutions to identify the PEPs and then bureaucrats than trying hard individually, banks and finance companies. That entity, if it is made accountable and with proper muscle and proper resources, they should be able to validate each and every NIC number, whether they are a Pradesh Sabha member, whether they are a division secretary, whether there is an assistant government agent, or whether he's a police officer, whether he's an examiner at the Department of Motor Transport, motor traffic, or whether he's a valuer or at the customs. These are the proper places where the social unfriendly activity is taking place, isn't it?
Yes.
So it's a practice. It is up to the regulator and then the parliament members and the government to put the infrastructure in place. And then it is also up to the practitioners of financial services to suggest that this could be done easily this way. So our assignment is also trying to communicate a message to the regulator and also the government, probably.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome. All right. So can we take a break here, half an hour break? Can we meet at 11:30?
Okay, sir.
Sure.
Sir, this is Randilu. I have a quick question before we break. Can I
Yes.
present it?
Yes, please.
Just want to know what is the recommended way of gathering the KYC information? Is as a part of the normal application or as a separate KYC form?
Yes, recommended KYC components. There are in couple of starting from the Financial Transaction Reporting Act Section 2, and then subsequent amendments to that, as well as there were a couple of directions by the FIU indicating minimum KYC requirements, and in particular the rule number 1 of 2016 and in rule number 1 of 2018. Now this is the task that I want you to carry out. Just find out and then incorporate as much as possible, because as a regulator will not be able to obtain this and this and this and this, and then as practitioners, you and I cannot limit ourselves to that explicit regulations only, because to our profession there should be additional information which can also sometimes omitted by the regulator, or regulator may not have had information with regard to that particular piece of information up to now. So therefore, collecting and ascertaining or assimilating the information on number of data, KYC data, is up to each and every institution and the practitioner, the officer in charge. As I indicated at the first day of our meeting, I think there is about 30 to 35 pieces of information that an institution can obtain from each customer. For some customers, it can be only 10, 15. For some customers, it can be 20, 30. Some customers, it can be 30, 35. And then most of the modern core banking systems, provide for about 30 to 35 pieces of KYC information of individual customers and corporate customers. So therefore, when you obtain such information and then feed into the core system, it can cater to your needs and highlight such information when you want to do a transaction with that particular customer. This customer is so and so, and his KYC is this. So screen of a computer, you can get those information at any point of service of that particular institution. So I get the summary of answer to your question is that the regulator, yes, they have defined up to about, in my guess, up to about 15 to 16 or 17 pieces of information in various, if you accumulate various directions and then Parliament Acts. But that you should not be limited to that. Having more information of a customer is a win-win situation for you and your customer both. All right.
Thank you, sir. Actually, what I want to know is, do we have to have a separate KYC form as such, or can we incorporate to the application itself?
Yes, the formula is now if you compare account opening applications of different banks, some banks have 1 page, some banks have 2 pages, some banks have 4 or 5 pages as well. There is no particular formula, but when it comes to the Parliament Acts and the directions by the FIU and the bank supervision and non-bank supervision, you have to abide by that, comply to that in the first place. But my suggestion is that these do not be limited to that stipulated by the regulations or regulators. You open and even your account opening application providing for additional space for additional information to be provided by a customer if the customer thinks fit. That's also going to play a big role. And of course, when the account relationship is established, and as time goes on, weeks and months passes by, when new transactions are conducted, you might be able to extract new information of a customer and then update it in your database. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome. Are there any more questions, please?
Is there any like what you call law instructions or the gazette notification specifying this video KYC and online KYC mechanism issued by the central bank? Are there any governing instructions?
I think there is. Now, can you please do some research and find it out? Sure. And then also, I'm also on the learning side, like you, on this particular aspect. Okay. Because I shared that information last week, because when I read through the internet, I saw NDB publishing VKYC, video KYC. In my opinion, according to my understanding, the signature of the customer in the application form, or where we popularly call mandate form, has to be signed manually. Okay. Has to be signed manually in front of a bank officer. Right? It has to be signed manually in front of a bank officer. So therefore, that is my understanding, because the Electronic Transaction Act, and then there are a few Parliament Acts also, 1 or 2, and the Payment and Settlement Department of Central Bank of Sri Lanka has been driving this project of blockchain and then eKYC as well, I think, other than the FIU. So if you can please do some inquiry from these guys, Director Payment and Settlement or Director FIU, and enrich your assignment with that, as well as share the information in this forum. It will be helpful tremendously if you can do that, please.
Sure, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
And sir, considering this slide, whether this page number 14, the regulatory framework to identify ML and FT.
Page number 14.
Yes.
Yes.
Are these legislations are the first initial one issued by the central bank, or are there any previous ones also there?
No, these are the on this pair for the on this subject. These are the initial ones.
Initial one, no?
As I told you,
Yeah.
prior to these, particularly these 1, 2, 3 Parliament Acts,
Okay.
we as practicing bankers, I was also one of the International Trade Department of BOC, handling LCs and all that. We were really embarrassed, and then we were questioned by the foreign bankers and the foreign authorities, FATF and other authorities, that what are the laws in Sri Lanka criminalizing money laundering and terrorist financing. We did not have anything. So we supplied information, and then we wanted the central bank and the government, successive governments, to fulfill the vacuum. And those drafts were with the legal draftman for about 11 long years. And finally, with the agitation of the central bank, by the bankers through the central bank and the SLBA, these parliament acts were passed in 11 minutes, 10 minutes in the parliament. So prior to this, as I shared with you, the recording of customer data, particularly on the certificate of deposits, somewhere in 1980s, it was very loose. There was provision for issuance of CDs without the name and address of a customer. Like when you issued that certificate, it's like a 1,000 rupee note or 5,000 rupee note. If anyone finds it on the street, that person could have, that CD could have been encashed by any person who found it. They are a certificate. And also you would remember, some of you would remember, there was a time that Sri Lanka permitted numbered accounts. Accounts could be opened by customers with only one number. And the bank issues a number, but the bank will have the information of that particular customer, but the customer information will never be divulged even to the regulator. Those type of accounts, CDs and numbered accounts, was introduced to attract hidden capital or foreign capital. But later on, with the development of terrorism and then money laundering regulations elsewhere in the world, like through FATF, the central bank has to introduce these 3 Parliament Acts and then also require the bankers and the finance companies to record the buyer of CDs in the CDs issued register, and then the person encashing the CDs in a separate register. And later on, through the FTRA Section 2, they were compelled to, most of them were compelled to abandon the CDs, issuance of CDs, or issue the CD writing the name on top only, and asking the bank branches to cross it, not negotiable, account pay only, meaning it's a FD certificate, but the name carries a CD. So effectively, CD as a financial product was discontinued, because under Section 2 of the FTRA, CD, by issuing a CD, every financial institution has to run a mini central depository system. For each CD, if there is no name written on that, each holder who changes hand with the CD, because it is a negotiable transfer, is a change, the ownership could be changed, isn't it? By endorsement or transfer. The name and address of each holder has to be recorded by that particular financial institution who issued the CD. They had to run a book or recording of each and every holder. Purchaser could sell it or transfer it to A, B, C, D, E, or Z. So it was made a little impracticable by Section 2 of FTRA, issuance of CD. So basically what crafty bankers did was they issued the CD but made it compulsory to indicate the name and non-transferable. And account pay only, in the sense the purchaser has to come and encash it like FD. So at the same time, numbered accounts also have to be discontinued by the central bank because of the international pressure. Right?
Noted, sir.
Okay. So let's take a small break. And now it is 11:20, isn't it? Can we come back at 11:50? Anyway, up to now, we have spoken of KYC, CDD, and EDD. Now, best practices to mitigate risks. Best practices to mitigate risks by financial institution professionals. Basically, focusing on KYC and CDD and EDD is one of the best practices. And as we indicated as a response to a question just before the break, yes, there are minimum standards, minimum KYC and CDD and EDD specifications by the regulator in the directives, regulations, and Parliament Acts. We can total up and then arrive at 14, 15, or 16 pieces of information stipulated by the regulator himself. But as we now know, we should not be limited to that. We should not be limited to that. There can be different pieces of information for each customer, different informations, which is going to be really helpful in the course of relationship that you are going to maintain with the customer relationship, and in the performance of various types of transactions that we discussed in a prior slide. It is going to be more healthy and more efficient when we are practicing anywhere banking. Now, you know the meaning of anywhere banking? I hope everybody knows. When we procure and then install the core banking systems now, where one particular server is going to be accessed by each and every branch of unit of the bank or the finance company, a customer can go into any branch of the particular finance company or the bank and do transaction. That's anywhere banking. So if a customer of bank A walks up to if a customer's branch A of a bank or a finance company walks up to a branch X or Y or Z of the same institution in a very different location, geographical location, just a matter of typing the customer information number, CIF number, or the NIC number, or the name, they will be able to access the profile of the customer, nature of the transactions, and more importantly, the KYC data of that particular customer. It will be a menu-driven activity authorized to the front officers of each branch, and that particular customer will be able to service or cater to his requirements at any branch of the entity or institution. This is going to be very handy, not only promoting business activity, in attracting new business to the particular institution, and the facility to add on to the KYC data of that particular customer at any point of service in different geographical locations is going to help update the KYC, CDD, EDD data of that particular customer, and also to attract other business from this particular customer, not limiting to the existing portfolio of business activities that the customer does with your entity. You'll be able to request the customer or grow with the customer. You can instigate, encourage the customer to grow his business activities, relationships, and create new business, and or attract businesses that he does with other institutions, competing institutions, to your institution. So this KYC, CDD, EDD data maintenance, if done with enthusiasm, it can really help you to grow your business. Then next best practice is record keeping, the archiving. Now FTRA, Financial Transaction Reporting Act, requires the information of customers to be recorded for minimum of 6 years after the closure of the account relationship. Not from the establishment of account relationship, but after closing of the account relationship, 6 years, the records must be maintained. That's the provision given in the Parliament Act, Financial Transaction Reporting Act. If there is any dispute to be resolved, then until that dispute is resolved amicably, the institution will not be able to close or delete the records. They have to maintain the records. Then monitoring and reviewing on a day by day, week by week, month by month with the new business transactions into the relationship, customer relationship. The entity should be, financial institution should be monitoring and reviewing the KYC data, CDD, EDD, and activities of this particular customer. Then KYC data remediation. If certain aspects of KYC data is obsolete or has to be revisited, it has to take place effectively and then kept updated. This is very particular, important for the large institutions when there are dormant accounts, when the accounts are open and operated sometime or not, and they go into nil transaction stage, and then finally after 6 months or so, the core banking systems of respective institutions transfer them to a dormant section, whereas it has to be only activated by the customer at the customer request. It has to be reactivated by only a senior officer of the financial institution. And that dormant status, if it continues for more than 10 years, the rules and regulations by the direction by the regulator, Central Bank of Sri Lanka, is that the balances, 90% of the balances must be transferred to the central bank as unclaimed balances and records kept with them. So only 10% can be maintained. In case the custom turns up back again after 10 or 11 or 12 years, then the institution has to reactivate and write to the central bank and obtain the remitted money back again for the use of the customer. Everything has to be done with proper authentication and verification of authenticity. To verify the authenticity again, the KYC data, updating and remediation helps. Then measuring risks, very important in the survival of the institution, financial institution. Measuring of risks. Primarily, it is going to be the task of the risk manager, but the compliance department, compliance officer also must have a hand on it. And then help support the risk manager to measure the risk of each customer. And the compliance, particularly compliance officers' responsibility is to validate the risk assessment performed by the risk managers, risk department, and then ensure that the correct risk methodology is used and correct evaluation is arrived at. Plus, there should be an effort made to identify the return and compare with the risk return comparison. And thereafter, mitigation, efforts to mitigate the risks, to lower the risk numbers, and then help the institution to earn more return, more income out of the customer, so that there'll be more return than the risks undertaken. This is called the process of managing the risk. It is in the expertise of the risk department, all right, but that fact must be overlooked by the compliance. Compliance must know the risk evaluation, assess the accuracy, and be aware of the risk return profile of each customer relationship. Then it comes to the fourth stage. The risks which cannot be mitigated at all should be able to share with, at least part of it should be able to share with other financial institutions or other departments, and therefore comparatively the return is enhanced or increased to be more than the risk undertaken. Then the fifth stage, if still the risk numbers are greater than the return or income that is generated by the institution, if the risk numbers cannot be mitigated, cannot be managed, cannot be shared, then at the fifth stage, recommendation and discussion with the compliance risk, and then probably the senior management to take steps to terminate the relationship so that the risk return profile, overall risk return profile of the institution become healthy. In other words, income is secured or enhanced. The sustainability of the institution is ensured. This is called de-risking. The de-risking process can happen even with large relationships if the risk return profile cannot be made favorable to the financial institution. Then reporting suspicion, not only suspected activities of money laundering and terrorist financing, there should be reporting of unhealthy practices detrimental to the activities or benefit of your organization by certain customers. And then those kind of reports can be discussed internally, may not be reported to the external authorities like the regulator, FIU, or bank supervision or non-bank supervision, but they can be dealt with internally and a decision taken with the blessings of the senior management, ALCO, or strategic planning committee, or finally the board of directors, if it is so important. But if it is something to do with the legality of the activities, then definitely a suspicious activity report or suspicious transaction report has to be initiated. To facilitate reporting suspicion from the grassroots level of the front officers of each branch, there should be an internal communication link established. And the compliance must oversee that. This can be done with the help of the IT, Information Technology Department. It can be a simple solution like email, dedicated email, not accessible to other unauthorized parties. But it should be in a summary form where the grassroots level front office personnel or branch personnel are in a position to fill a small blank form on the computer screen, especially highlighting the reason for suspicion, name of the account number, and the date, and so on, other critical information. With a minimal effort, with a click of a button, the suspicious activity report or transaction report should be able to be sent to the compliance officers department, where they scrutinize the detailed reason and of the activity, and then if it warrants to be reported as STR, suspicious transaction report, to the central bank, FIU, then immediate action should be taken after discussion with the senior management, particularly CEO, MD, if it is going to impact the reputation of the institution. The compliance officer should be able to submit such a STR through the FinNet or GoAML systems, dedicated online systems linked to the computer at the FIU, where the reporting is done confidentially and no outside parties should be aware of it, especially the customer involved shouldn't be informed at any cost. Finally, the responsibility of investigation and action by the FIU or any relevant law enforcement agency will bear the responsibility not only of maintaining the confidentiality that from where the STR was reported, but the investigation proper and then meeting with the punishment or remedy action is the responsibility of the law enforcement agency and the FIU. Then finally, aligning risk versus return. I think we spoke at length on this. Aligning risk versus return is really important, critically important for the survival of your institution, of your organization. And then also really important to maintain harmony among the management team, senior management team. The compliance officer is part of the senior management and the board. This part must be really managed harmoniously with limitation of passing of information to only the authorized persons. The risk versus return evaluation and recommendation of risk mitigation, risk management, and risk elimination should be also limited to certain authorities who would be part of in the final decision. So these are the best practices to mitigate risks. Any question, please? If there are no questions, we shall proceed. Non-compliance, implications and penalties. Non-compliance, on the whole, the implication is that if you don't perform the managing of KYC CDD properly and the compliance function in overall, the profitability and survival of the institution is going to be that bad. It's going to be at stake. So therefore, it is vital that the compliance and non-compliance should be pursued. So businesses found to be involved, assisting and concealing, not reporting suspected activities are vulnerable to the following risks. These are the statutory penalties. Financial penalties include LKR 100,000 to 1 million, where FIU has a power to impose per penalty, and or imprison directors and employees for 6 months to 24 months. That imprisoning part will happen after the court process of litigation through the court of law. But the financial penalty at the outset is within the power of the FIU, as we have seen in the recent past, especially for inadequate KYC is maintained. Several institutions have penalized a sum of 1 million rupees, 200,000 rupees, 250,000 rupees, and 100,000 rupees, respectively. And then the FIU can also recommend to the monetary board, which is part of the central bank, the revocation of business license. Revocation of business license. And then the FIU or the bank supervision or non-bank supervision can request the particular institution, bank or finance company to rescind the job agreement of that particular employee or employees who were responsible for that. Or loss of employee's job. There were several instances that the regulator addressed letters in writing to the senior most officer at the financial institutions or to the board requesting removal of employees for certain offenses. Then the other penalty involves when the customers get a feeling that this particular financial institution is weak in compliance to the regulations, they shy away. It will be hard to attract new customers, and the existing customers also walk away. So, which will construe loss of business, and by word of mouth, it will spread, and before long, the institution may have to close up. Loss of revenue and profit is true enough with the loss of business, loss of reputation, lack of counterparties to transact will bring in loss of revenue and loss of profits. More importantly, the maintenance of reputation, the loss of reputation when you are not compliant is a major event. To build up reputation, it takes very long time, years and years and years. But to lose the reputation, it might take very short period of time, or one act, or a very short period of time. So therefore, finance professionals should be extremely careful of their business activities, starting from their personal activities and appearance, dress code, individual character also might contribute to the reputation of the institution. So therefore, loss of reputation can be avoided by compliance to the code of ethics, rules and regulations and directions, and Parliament Acts by the financial professionals and the institutions. What are the responsibilities of the directors? The main responsibilities being protection for the depositor, protection for the customer. Deposit institutions like finance companies and banks must endeavor to protect the rights of the depositor. There should be more or less a guarantee that at least the capital or the money deposited will be returned, including a commensurate rate of interest or a profit, share of profit for the deposits made. Customers' rights must be protected. At no point the customer's rights should be violated by way of undue charges, undue fees, and other unnecessary advice, unnecessary unwanted or irrelevant business activities. Ensuring an appropriate monitoring mechanism in compliance with directions. How do we really monitor and ensure appropriate monitoring mechanism in compliance with directions? There should be a feedback, customer feedback, listening to customer complaints. There should be provision for customers to voice their concerns. Most large institutions have a dedicated senior officer as complaint resolution officer, and his name and contact details are published or exhibited at the customer lobbies and in their websites. Then senior management and the board of directors must show the compliance leadership, a culture of compliance to each and every regulation that is known and best market practice. In other words, being a professionally known senior management and the board of directors, the leadership matters. Then, which is exhibited by a declaration of management commitment. The management is going to sign or display a commitment that the compliance to each and every regulation and best market practice will be ensured, guaranteed. So that's a cue for the middle management and the lower employees, low grade employees, that compliance is a matter of business and compliance must be pursued at any cost. And walk the talk, meaning what is being exhibited, what is being spoken of, must be carried out. The action must be shown clearly. Walk the talk. Compliance culture. Exhibit that actions are talking what is indicated. Common compliance language, common service language. In day-to-day business, the senior management and the board of directors must know the compliance wordings, vocabulary, and they must be speaking of in that particular language, compliance language. And the body language also show that the compliance is pursued.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
What is that walk the talk? It means that what we have agreed as action to be implemented. What is it that you mean?
Yes, yes. Because when you have the declaration of management commitment to comply with the rules and regulations, that by action they must show that the compliance is pursued. That is walk the talk. Got it?
Which means that whatever the regulations and actions plans what we had agreed has to be implemented. Is it?
Implemented. What really meaning here is that now to meet or to comply with the regulations, there can be mechanisms adapted by the particular individual institution in their own way, and then those mechanisms should not be mended, should not be amended, should not be ad hoc in carrying out. In all the while, when it comes to a compliance of a certain rule or regulation, the compliance to the rules and regulations must be adhered to. That is walking the talk. What is being stipulated through the management commitment declaration, compliance policy, and customer charter or customer service documents must be adhered to. You cannot miss in one case of a customer and apply it to another case of a customer. Walking the talk. All right.
That is my suggestion, sir. So if there's any subtopics like that,
Yes.
in future, is it possible us to have some briefing on the same?
All right, will do. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks very much. So, measure compliance employee engagement score. This is a methodology for each and every employee. Certain compliance departments of banks I know, they draft a scoring document, whether they comply with the stipulations, internal regulations and external regulations, and whether they achieve the compliance is denoted by a certain score. Say 1 is lowest, 10 is highest. And if they match all the compliance requirements and score a high, achieve a high score, that can be an arrangement, that can be a point or a advantage to the next promotion or increment. That's one method of encouraging the employees to stick to the compliance requirements. Then positive customer feedback. Make the customers also invited or uninvited to respond to a customer feedback form and see where things are missing, where the compliance is weak. That is going to help in the medium to long term to navigate the institution to the desired results, including profitability. Then enable empowerment, delegation. Whatever said and done, when you disseminate information, including rules and regulations, compliance requirements, you have to trust the instinct and understanding of the employees and delegate their authority to transact business activities. And when you empower, normal human instinct or psychology is that they, in their own mind, they are going to be creating a positive think process of belongingness to the institution. which can produce results to the positive angle in an enormous scale. So enabling empowerment or delegation subject to the positive customer feedback and then measuring score of employees would really bring in a lot of good than the bad by your achievements to the organization. Then the roadblocks to compliance or practices and processes should be identified beforehand by the compliance professionals, compliance officer. Any obstacles, and then with proper discussion and negotiation with the relevant authorities and the senior management and the board of directors, those roadblocks must be eliminated. And then easy passage should be created to facilitate compliance. Like the example that we took of reporting, easy reporting of suspicious activities. And highlighting any fraudulent activities when necessary. Like ringing the alarm bells or those type of mechanisms can remove the roadblocks or difficulties, stumbling blocks for easy compliance practices. Sustain the focus. Keep on eternal and intermittent education and then awareness programs, and avoid distraction. Increase enthusiasm among the workforce so that not only the compliance culture, positive compliance culture, the performance of the desired goals of the financial institution could be achieved with much more ease. Identification due diligence. If a customer cannot provide, it's a question, right? It's a question to you. I need some answer, please. If a customer cannot provide the information required or the given information is contradictory, according to the AML regulations, what is the most relevant precautionary action branches could take? What is the precautionary aspect branches could take? The scenario is that customer walks in and then does not provide or fails to provide or omits to provide information requested or provides contradictory information. Do you want to carry on the business, or what is the precautionary action that you would ask your branch staff to do, branch staff to take? What is your place? Yes.
So we can raise an STR.
Raise an STR. Okay.
First, we accommodate the customer, onboard the customer, and we'll freeze the particular account immediately and raise the STR then.
I think, forgive me for telling this, but on the whole, you are suspecting the customer at the first go, isn't it?
So no, before raising an STR, anyway, we will be just going through the transaction history and all. No? So we will be basically getting an idea. So what the customer is into. So if we are in a suspicious if we are thinking suspicious about the customer, so we can definitely raise an STR.
That is true. Now, the scenario is that the customer cannot provide or does not provide or is providing contradicting information. For example, he might not have the NIC, or he might not have the driving license, or he may not have the permanent address.
So in case of that, I think we can't open up an account initially. If he is not willing to establish his identity or address or something, initially we can't be able to open up an account, I think.
Yes, that's true. That's true. So, but what I'm trying to drive you attention here is that you should be pro-business. You should not drive a customer away. So, as you quite rightly said, if the NIC not there or identity not there, you cannot open. That's true. You can ask, you can give the forms to fill up, and then even sometimes there are facilities in certain core banking system for you to give a provisional account number. It's not a proper account number, provisional account number or some other welcome document or something. You are not making the customer for inadequate key informations. But supposing the customer comes with a NIC at a home address of a village, but now he has come to the urban cities and he is boarded or he is in a temporary address. And you find it difficult to comprehend with the address verification because he doesn't have the utility bills to prove the address. And in such a, sorry? In such a situation, what you could do is, if the lacking information is a minor nature, you can go ahead with the account opening and give him a time frame to submit the missing information. And until such time, you can accept any deposit, but stop withdrawals or not give ATM card. You can train your front office staff to take action in that manner. If it is not a critical missing information like the NIC and passport or the driving license, and there can be a person who has not come with a proof of employment. He has NIC and proof of address and all that, but proof of employment is not there. You can train your staff to open account and then operate subject to a time limit, say 2 weeks, 1 month, not a very long time. And until such time to encourage the customer to bring in the information to you or send the information to you, you can stop withdrawals. Or you can ask, when you bring in such information, we will give you a debit card. We can give you an ATM card. Not now. So that what you do is, you facilitate the customer transaction, but at the same time you stipulate a condition for him to come back to you. What I'm trying to drive you thinking is that to a positive culture of acquiring business. Any other comments?
So we'll say the customer has failed to submit the required documents in the near future.
Right.
So anyway, we have opened up the accounts and all. And if the customer fails to submit those documents in the future, what should the action to be taken by the institution?
Then of course it is a matter of, now most practically what I observed is that the institution, if it is within the reach of traveling of a few hours to reach the customer where he resides or does business, you might be able to send the executive or a clerical hand of the institution to meet the customer and they discuss how to obtain the information and bring it to your institution. Or else, worst case scenario, if he's absconding, if he's avoiding submission, then stop the account and then submit STR. Because there can be a hidden reason which you as a financial professional cannot highlight, cannot retrieve from the customer the reason which he is absconding or he's not submitting the information. So the STR will maintain the confidentiality that the STR reporting has gone from the institution, and the relevant law enforcement agency will take care of his suspected activity. Right?
Okay, sir.
Okay. So in that process, not only you have secured your business as it comes, but there is, what I want to highlight is that the regulatory mechanism is structured for you to report suspected activity and still keep confidentiality and for you to carry on with business. So that will facilitate at least 70, 80, 90% of the business activity that is coming in your way to be secured by you. But at least 5-10% of the business activity of unruly crowd to be reported to the law enforcement agencies, so that next time he will not resort to that type of activity with any other institution or with your institution. All right. Any other question? Any other answer to the question? Yes.
Sir, there is a small question.
Yes.
We'll see, sir, that there may be some instances where we identify some unusual transactions on a customer's account.
Unusual transaction. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Unusual transactions on a customer's account, and is it a best practice for us to review the KYC through a secure digital banking platform or over the phone? Is that possible?
Yes. Now, unusual transaction means definitely you must be reviewing and updating your KYC database. No?
Yes.
It calls for updating of the KYC database, and you must really find out the unusual activity, reason for it, and in positive note, it can be because of a positive economic development of that person or family or background. In which case, if it is positive economic development, you as a provider of financial assistance to that particular customer, you are in a position to sell more and more of your products and support the guy to encourage him to make his life easier and accelerate his satisfactory development in economic trends. Okay, but if it is on the negative side, if he is hiding and if he is collecting unsolicited money, or he is trying to pursue money laundering or terrorist financing, or he is using someone's collected funds to his own personal benefit, extortion. If you identify such a thing, then there is a way that you can exit the customer if there's no damage done to your institution or the society, you can have a chat with the customer and then correct him. Or finally, if you think that it is harmful for your institution and the society, then resort to the STR.
So what I'm asking is, sir, is it possible for us to revive the KYC through a digital platform or over the phone or something, without having a chat with the customer face to face? Is it possible for us to update it over the phone?
Yeah, for your common average knowledge, sensible answers are obtained from over the telephone or any other electronic media. Then if you're happy, then that should be okay, but it should be recorded. That's one of the most important benefit of recording the evidence. Because later on, if you are proved wrong, after I relied on telephone and electronic means of proof of his innocence, if you are misled and if he's actually have been into harmful activity for the society or money laundering or terrorist financing, and if it is proven through the FIU or the law enforcement agency or the police or CID or the court of law, for to prove your innocence for having made adequate inquiry and then adequate evidence, collecting adequate evidence, then your recording should be able to prove that. Your recording must be able to prove that, because Electronic Transactions Act also permits electronic evidence as proof, including SMS messages and then emails and all sort of things. So you must be really careful in that manner in handling such information. But prime and motive or focus should be given for recording, because it may be after 1 month, after 6 months, after 1 year, after 2 years, after 10 years that such issue crops up, by which time you, having handled the case, you would have promoted and gone, or you had got transferred and gone. Somebody else would have been sitting in your desk or seat, that person might not know what has gone. So evidence recording for the benefit of the subsequent successes of your in your capacity to review and then prove the innocence of the institution is very vital. The proper recording of the evidence.
Noted. Thank you.
So there is another practical question.
Yes, please.
Say one of the customer is having a account in somewhere in Colombo.
All right.
And the particular customer is actually performing the transaction over the counter transactions on a distance branch.
Mm-hmm.
So there are significant cash inflows routing to his account.
All right.
Okay. So practically, who has to update the KYC, whether the particular remote branch or the account holding branch? What is the best practice?
Logically, it is the branch which maintain the account. The manager and the senior staff of that branch who opened and maintained the account, you are able to identify the account holding branch, isn't it?
We can identify.
Yes. So that particular branch should know the deposit fluctuations. You said in very cash intensive deposit transactions, right?
Yes.
So then when the deposit level increases, it is one of the prime duties, functions of the manager and the executive staff of that particular branch who maintain that particular account, as to inquire and find out why these balances are enhancing. Incremental balances, which account and why, and what is the type of transactions, and then there should be, and that's one of the most fundamental functions of the manager and the senior executives of that particular branch who maintains the account. So, secondly, when the customer approaches a remote branch and then deposits the money frequently, then there should be KYC and due diligence at that particular branch as well, isn't it? I would argue that it is that branch who should be verifying the source of funds in the first place. So then if there is any suspicion, they, under anywhere banking, I think that particular branch also might be able to view the customer profile on the screen as to how the balances have fluctuated, minimum balance and lowest balance and highest balance and so on and so forth, and increment of daily increment or weekly increment or monthly increments. And then if warrants, if required, they can have an internal telephone conversation or email conversation with the manager or the senior executive of the branch who maintains the account for that particular customer, according to their knowledge, because that particular branch may have more knowledge of that particular customer, what he does for the business activity, and then how does he exist or live, and then what income he has, what additional income they have, and in that particular distant location where the distant branch is located, where he comes and deposits money, whether he has business links with that particular area. All that can be analyzed very easily, isn't it?
Yes.
So it is teamwork. It is a teamwork. But however, I know for a fact that most of the managers and the senior staff of the branches fail to evaluate the increase and decreasing deposit levels and advance level, which they should be doing every morning. After every end of day operation, after the day ends. So that if that particular analysis and then accountability is maintained, responsibility is maintained, I think everyone will be very happy. And if everything goes on well positively, the incremental business can be pursued with cross-selling and various other marketing aspects. All right?
Yes, that's correct. Thanks.
Any other question, please? So you are positively inclined to go for business if the lacking KYC information for the customer who are just walking into a branch is of a minor detail, and then you might even open the account and then invite the customer to bank with you, and then give a time frame for the customer to submit the missing information. Is that understood? Because compliance culture should not be standing as a stumbling block for growth of business. Because I know for practical reasons, some of the institutions that I have been working for, some branch managers used to submit as a reason for deposit base not growing, advances base not growing, business activity not growing, compliance insistence, compliance requirements. And as I told you the other day, that one of the compliance officers of one of the large banks in Sri Lanka was given a golden handshake, was asked to go home with, of course, a compensation by the MD, because he was imposing rigid rules. And there's certain deposit customers, existing customers and also new customers, was sent to competing institutions. So therefore, that particular large institution had no other option but to send the compliance officer home. So this is the positive thinking. What I'm trying to inculcate in your mind is that you must always work hand in glove with your business. If you are working for compliance department, there should be harmony, there should be friendship, there should be guidance from the compliance department, compliance officer to the business segment, business activity, to the positive acquisition of business, not to leave the business on the wayside, so that everybody, the teamwork can be envisaged. The management, senior management team will be happy. The senior board of directors and the senior committees, strategy development committee, ALCO, they'll be happy with the compliance function. Because compliance function is an essential function. If you take the regulation, section 14 of the Financial Transactions Reporting Act itself, it stipulates the regulatory responsibilities only. It does not say weigh the risk and return and do your business. It doesn't say that. If you go by the book, go by the regulation, go by the gazette notification, minimum KYC standards, it is a hard iron rod trying to hit the business section or marketing guys or front office people who are being given targets to grow the business. It should not be the way. Compliance should be assisting all the business units, especially the front office. In fact, as I was telling the other day, compliance officer must join the relationship managers or the marketing team to visit the customers. And they must be given targets of certain customers, number of customers to be visited, certain number of customers, volumes to be brought into as new business, and so on and so forth. Saying that the compliance officer should not overlook the compliance stipulations or compliance rules and regulations. They must comply with that. They must make the institution comply with that, but at the same time, enthusiastically promote the business. This is what is required. All right. If there are no other questions, I hope I have communicated a clear message of importance of harmony between the business and the compliance. Record keeping. Financial Transaction Reporting Act require records to be kept for 6 years from the date of closing of the relationship. If it is a source document pertaining to a transaction, from the date of transaction. But the KYC data and other important data from the closing of the relationship. In case of an inquiry, until it is over, the record must be maintained. It can be longer than 6 years in case of an inquiry or investigation. And this is the only way to prove financial institutions' responsibility in case the financial institution misjudged. I think I gave you a good example in the previous slide. If a school teacher comes up and opens an account and she submits a salary statement, and then and you come to judgment where monthly deposits to the account can be 100,000 maximum if her salary is that 100,000. But from the next month onward, you see 250,000, 300,000 money deposited. And then on inquiry, you find out that she does private tuition. So that can be recorded. If you cannot put your hands on documented documentary evidence, the manager or senior executive can make a note on the customer file that she is a teacher with a 100,000 salary, but she does private tuition and the monthly average income is so much, which will facilitate any subsequent successor for your seat to pass on the information to make their judgment easy. And by way of recording, even if that was proved to be wrong at a subsequent event, if the teacher had been collecting money for terrorism purposes from various people and then depositing in an account, and it was proved to be, and the police inquires about it, you should be able to show that your understanding. It has been a case where she had told that she does private tuition, and verification to understanding our general knowledge and our average judgment, it was private tuition. But you should not record bogus and unreal evidence, because it will be a shame on your institution. But it should be very well documented, and truth must be verified. Truth must be verified. One clear example, practical example I can relate to at this point. The Tamil Rehabilitation Organization, TRO, NGO, and then I was told you some story behind that in the morning. This particular organization applied for a lease facility of 460 million from an institution. Lease facility. When they were accepted responsible NGO. So the institution approved the lease facility for import of trucks. And then the moment that the lease facility was granted and import took place, the lease installments were not honored. So when inquiries were made that the trucks were delivered to the LTTE, and then some of them have been located at the Omantai checkpoint. So what is your institution status quo if there was no record maintained that the TRO was supporting the vehicles housed in Eastern Province to substantiate that? Just imagine the plight of that institution when the investigations took place. The institution was able to prove that the lease facility was granted in this particular year, and when the document submitted has to be relied upon, and the documents looked very genuine, and the import facility was also substantiated or reasoned out, because they had to fly between districts and houses to houses to support these orphanage girls. So just imagine if the records are not maintained properly, what would have been the real impact of that institution? All right. Monitoring and reviewing, conduct periodic detailed background check, obtain business profile as a matter of good business practice, and review the client identification periodically. And in that process, updating the KYC database. In the case of clubs, societies, charities, companies, partnerships, etc., it is a legal requirement to collect individual details of the directors, office bearers, as in the case of an individual account for each of them. This is very important, including for corporate companies and then club societies and then partnerships. The directors and the senior office bearers of that particular entity, the KYC data of each and every officer must be obtained as if it is their own account. They may have limited responsibility, but however, for the banker's point of view, for the finance company's point of view, the office bearer must take responsibility for each and every transaction. So therefore, KYC information and CDD information, VDD information of each and every responsible officer must be obtained and then stored. Is that clear? Yes? Okay. Thank you. Reporting to regulator. Cash transaction report, CTR, I think you are very well acquainted with this. Cash transaction reports, when a transaction happens in the cash, over $1 million, cash transaction report must be submitted every fortnight, 1st to 15th within a week, and then 16th to 31st within a week. Then inward electronic fund transfer, EFTR in, and outward electronic fund transfer, EFTR out, also must be, reports must be submitted of transaction over $1 million, 1st to 15th and 16th to 31st through the FIU and LankaFin, FinNet or GoML systems has to be used for such submission. Then STR, I think you're clear of submitting of STR. The responsibility is that within the organization, suspicious report submission also must be streamlined and made easy so that within a short period of time, the analysis can take place and the resubmission to the FIU can happen through GoML or FinNet. So the dedicated reporting portals provided by the central bank are LankaFin for finance reports and FinNet and GoML for FIU reports. STR, suspicious activity report. Is there a difference between SAR and STR? Yes, there's a slight report difference. In some other countries, they call it SAR, suspicious activity report. Suspicious transaction and suspicious activity, the difference can be highlighted like this. A transaction taking place of suspicious nature is suspicious transaction taking place. But a customer walk into a branch of a bank or finance company and inquiring of an active transaction, account opening or remittance or trade or whatever, but still he does not do the transaction. And if the executive or the manager feels suspicious of it, of the activity, the customer and the proposed activity, it is a suspicious activity report. So what in Sri Lanka we practice is suspicious transaction report, but suspicious activity report is practiced by some other countries. So in which case, customers who want to approach financial institutions for illicit or illegal transactions are also taken care of by reporting suspicious activity reports. Then should be promptly reported to a money laundering reporting officer. Strictly confidential failure to report is an offense. Tipping off is an offense. Tipping off is informing the perpetrator or the customer that this is wrong or this is should not be done or something like that, when the customer is really a perpetrator of a predicate offense. Sanction screening. I think time is up. I think I don't want to keep you waiting, but only 3 more slides. Let's do, no, not 3, there are 10 more slides. I'm sorry. There are 10 more slides. So let's discuss the balance slides on next Sunday. Next Sunday, because I know you're hungry. You have been listening patiently for the last 4 hours. Any question, please?
This SAR, that action has not to be implemented or done, or otherwise we have to report this as a SAR if it is doubtful, isn't it, sir?
Yes, yes. Suspicious activity, because meaning that even if that transaction had not happened, even if the transaction has not happened, you can incorporate the reporting. You can incorporate the reporting. I can relate one example. I don't know, I'm carrying on with the time overrun. There was a customer from walking to one of the branches of bank where I was working. Customer was from North India side. He had brought in some checks for collection, and the checks were written in Canadian dollars, and he wanted to open an account in the exact name of the name indicated in the check as beneficiary. One of the building house societies, one of the building societies in Canada. And the checks were, say, 100,000, 150,000, 200,000, like that, Canadian dollars. And the documents submitted to open the account to deposit these checks were submitted to the manager or the executive. And this particular executive went through the documentation, and she felt suspicious because it has to be a company account opening process, and the certain company documents, including the registrar of companies certificate of issuance of registering the company as a registered company, was here and there spelling mistakes and then omissions and then alterations. Including those other documents, a company should submit to the bank to open account. So this took a while, and then they were not happy with the submitted documents. So they submitted the documents to me as the compliance officer. So I went through, and then I called up the lawyer function appointed to that branch and had a discussion. And I requested her lawyer to obtain the verification of the register of companies, whether actually this company registration is genuine or not. Meanwhile, I also took measures to send emails and then other messages to our correspondent bank in Canada, submitting images of the checks, whether they are genuine, whether they can be presented for payment. So within a day, I got a reply back from the correspondent bank in Canada saying that checks are genuine, please present for collection. But the third day, the lawyer representing the branch came back running and said the register of companies are given in writing that the company registration is bogus. Company registration is bogus because the actual registered number for that particular registration was a different name. But this guy had amended the name to indicate the name appearing on the checks as beneficiary and wanted to open the account. So it was proven that it is an attempt of fraud. What had really happened is this guy had been working in the Canadian mail postal mail department, and he had pulled out certain checks and come to Sri Lanka and wanted to collect the proceeds of these checks. So finally, we not only stopped and alerted all our branches with numbers and then the name of the person and submitted an STR. And through SLBA, we informed without indicating the name of our institution. Through SLBA took effort, sent a communication to all the banks to refrain from purchasing such checks or collecting some checks for payment. So that was a suspicious activity because he was not a customer until the account was opened. No? We never opened account, so therefore he was not a customer. It was suspicious activity report. That's the importance of suspicious activity and a suspicious transaction. All right. So with that, we shall wind up for today. And if you don't have any questions, we shall meet at 9 o'clock on next Sunday.